Am I the asshole for feeling hurt that my mom doesn't want to spend Christmas with us? My mom lives in California while I'm in Iowa. I have 3 adult children, 2 sons who live in Iowa and a daughter who lives in California. Every year when we're able to travel, my husband and I, along with any of my sons who can join, fly to California. My husband has a large family, and we usually spend Christmas at their family gathering spot before joining my mom afterward. My dad passed over 10 years ago, and my mom has always been flexible about when we celebrate, since to her, Christmas is just a day we pick to exchange gifts. She's usually fine with us spending Christmas with my husband's family first. My mom also uses the time we're with my husband's family to visit my sister and her young children, who are under 18. We all agreed this setup works, and she's happy to see my sister and her grandkids while we're not in town for Christmas itself. This year we made plans to go to California again. We couldn't make it last year due to some work constraints on my end, so my mom hasn't seen either of my sons, my husband, or me since December 2022. I let my mom know we were planning to come, but I only have limited time off, so we'd be there for just 1 week. I shared the dates and told her I hoped she'd be able to spend some time with us. Her response was, "Well, that doesn't work well if I'm going to your sister's house. If I'm only staying for such a short time, why am I even making the trip?" This really hurt, as it felt like she was saying, "Why bother?" And it made me question, why are we even making the trip? The whole reason is to see her, which doesn't happen often. I understand why she might prefer spending Christmas with young children. Kids bring that magical holiday energy. But she sees my sister's family regularly throughout the year. They visit each other frequently. Meanwhile, she hasn't seen me, my sons, or my husband in almost 2 years. It's tough not to feel like we're being overlooked, especially given how rarely we're able to see her. In the spirit of full transparency, I'll admit that in previous visits we didn't do much together. I used to have limited mobility, but over the past 2 years, I've lost over 100 pounds and had both knees replaced. My mom knows this. I'm no longer the one saying, "Go out without me." I'm now ready and eager to make the most of my new knees and renewed energy, whether or not she joins me. So here I am, torn. I get that holidays with young kids can be more appealing than with adults who might not be as entertaining, but I can't shake the hurt. Am I the asshole for feeling this way? Or should I just let it go? I'm ready to be told to get over it, but I'm genuinely struggling with her reaction. Would I be the asshole if I asked my wedding photographer to touch up my photos for free? I got married in April 2024, and we chose an all-inclusive package from our venue, which included a photographer. We planned out the shots we wanted, but on the wedding day she seemed annoyed and rushed. Many of the photos feel off. I'm either not looking at the camera, or I look like she snapped the photo just as I looked her way without any time to pose. My husband, on the other hand, looks great in almost every shot. In most photos I look tense with a bit of resting face. At the end of her time she said goodbye to the venue host, who was right beside me, and she barely acknowledged me, like we were difficult clients. To clarify, we didn't make any specific demands, and she even had to ask if I wanted additional shots because my requests were so simple that I didn't use up her full allotted time. My family was actually shocked at how laid back I was. It was a simple wedding, mostly managed by the venue, so I didn't need many special requests. At the end of the night, I asked about the timeline for receiving the photos. She told me 5 to 6 weeks, and I thanked her. At 7 weeks, we hadn't heard anything, so I reached out. She apologized and said it was busy wedding season, estimating 12 to 13 weeks instead. I understood and didn't want to rush her, but I wanted to use some photos for reviews for her in the venue. She sent a couple for us to use, but I still didn't get the full album until 15 weeks after the wedding. When I finally received the album, I was shocked to find every single photo unedited. Some are so zoomed in that you can see the peach fuzz on my face. I nearly cried looking through them. Out of all the photos, there are only 3 I'd consider printing, and even those are distant shots or ones where my face isn't visible. It felt like she just threw them into an album and sent it over. I also noticed she'd completed other weddings taken after mine, and those photos were touched up. Additionally, she had my husband and his groomsmen doing fun, unique poses that highlighted their relationships, but she had my bridesmaids and me doing nothing but looking at each other. I'd like to ask her to touch up the photos as part of the package we already paid for, considering the wedding cost over $18,000 for just 75 guests. The package included touch-ups, so I feel this should have been part of what we received. However, because of her attitude, I'm hesitant to ask as I don't want to cause any drama. Would I be the asshole if I asked her to edit the photos as originally promised? Am I the asshole for photographing shared trash and reporting it to property management? I rent a unit in a large house that was converted into a duplex, with the ground floor and top floor as two separate units. In my city, the water, sewer, and garbage services must be registered under the property owner's name. Therefore, the owner pays these bills and reimbursement is split equally, with each unit responsible for 50% of each bill, charged through an online portal. Our city provides curbside recycling collection and curbside composting for yard debris and food waste. Compost and recycling are collected weekly, while garbage is collected every other week. If the garbage bin overflows or there are extra trash bags placed outside the bin, additional fees apply. The garbage bin is a standard single-family home type of bin. A few weeks ago, new tenants moved into the downstairs unit. Unfortunately, they have been placing recyclable and compostable items in the garbage bin, causing it to fill up more quickly than necessary and leaving insufficient space for actual garbage. Meanwhile, the recycling and compost bins always have plenty of room. To avoid paying extra fees, I've been photographing the overfilled garbage and emailing the images to property management. I don't think it's fair for me to be charged additional fees just because the new tenants haven't learned to separate their waste properly. However, my boyfriend thinks I'm overreacting by taking these photos. The downstairs tenants now give me dirty looks and have started doing petty things, like locking me out of the main entrance if they see me on the porch. Am I the asshole for photographing the trash and reporting the issue to property management to avoid these extra fees? Am I the asshole for thinking my husband's job should compensate him for mileage? My husband's usual work location is only 2.5 miles, a 7-minute drive, from our home. Recently, another office that's about 55 miles, 1 hour, away has been struggling and asked for volunteers from nearby offices to help out for a few days. My husband volunteered to help for a day last week and another day this week. I asked him if the company is going to reimburse the mileage he's putting on our personal car for these extra trips. The company is certainly capable of reimbursing mileage, they've done it before. From my perspective, it seems perfectly fair to ask for reimbursement, especially since he's commuting an extra 4 hours without compensation. Additionally, our car isn't in the best shape, so the added 100 miles per day is increasing wear and tear on the vehicle. When I brought up the topic of mileage, my husband said the company wouldn't be reimbursing him. He became defensive and argumentative when I explained that I thought it was unreasonable for him to do this without compensation. I expressed that I felt the company might be taking advantage of him, and suggested that if the other office truly needed help, the company should be providing incentives to encourage volunteers. I even pointed out that perhaps others hadn't volunteered because they saw it as a negative return for themselves. Unfortunately, the conversation turned into a low-key argument. So, am I the asshole here? Am I the asshole for not obeying my mother, 47F, when she wants me, 19M, to dress a certain way due to the temperature? Hello. My mother and I have had numerous disagreements, and one recurring issue is her wanting me to dress according to the season. Today, for example, I walked to my university, about a 30-minute walk, wearing shorts and a coat. When I returned home, it was around 9 degrees Celsius outside. For some background, I often wear fewer layers than what most people consider appropriate for the current temperature and season because I tend to feel too warm easily. I also simply feel more comfortable in shorts than in pants. When my mother saw me come home in cargo shorts, she was surprised. Later, she got upset, saying she doesn't want me to look weird, and warned that dressing this way might impact my future employment. She asked, "Do you see anyone else dressing like this?" She insisted that, since it's autumn, I should dress appropriately for the season and the temperature, to avoid negative looks from others. She even suggested that she might need to take away my shorts to prevent me from wearing them. We ended up in a shouting match about it, with neither of us willing to back down. So, am I the asshole here for dressing the way I feel comfortable, or is my mother being unreasonable? Would I be the asshole for preferring to keep my car until it dies instead of giving it to my mom? I, 21M, am a college student who works part-time and lives with my mom, 59F, to save money and cover gas for my car, a 2012 Buick Verano. Recently, I found out my car needs some costly repairs. My dad, 62M, who has helped me maintain it for the past 4 years, suggested I just drive it until the engine gives out. At that point, he'd help me find a new used car. My car currently has 167,000 miles on it, so it's nearing the end of its life. When I shared this plan with my mom, she asked if I could give her the car so she could fix it up and use it herself for her commute, as it's more fuel efficient than her 2008 Enclave, which gets about 20 mpg compared to my car's 23.5. But this would leave me without a car. A bit of background: My mom drove the Verano for around 7 years and passed it down to me after I got my license. She originally got the Enclave from her aunt, who gifted it to her before she passed away. My mom was upset at the idea of me running her car into the ground, but technically it was my dad's car from the beginning. Back in 2012, my parents swapped cars since the Verano was better for my mom's commute. My parents had an argument over the phone, and I overheard them because they tend to yell a lot. My mom argued that someone else could fix and use the car rather than me driving it into the ground. My dad's point was that if I gave her the car, I'd be left without transportation. To summarize, my mom suggested I drive my dad's old SUV, a 2002 Ford Expedition, which we mostly use to transport stuff or people. My dad refused because it's inefficient, 17 mpg, and has issues like broken gauges and wonky suspension. She then suggested my dad get me a new car as soon as possible, but due to financial limitations that's not feasible. She also mentioned that I could use my savings, but both my dad and I agree that I should keep that money for emergencies. Not once did my mom offer to trade cars with me, and she rarely lets me drive her Enclave unless I'm taking it to the shop for her. I feel like I'm stuck in an argument between my parents, but I agree with my dad. He told me the car is mine, and I'm under no obligation to give it to my mom. I feel a little selfish wanting to keep my car until it dies, especially since my dad and I had already agreed on this plan. I could use my savings to buy another car, but I'd prefer to save that money for emergencies when I'm on my own. Would I be the asshole for keeping my car until it dies even if it feels a bit selfish? Am I the asshole for not letting it go after my car was totaled? I am a 17-year-old male and a senior in high school in the southern United States. My high school serves students from my town and 2 nearby small towns. Each town has its own elementary and middle school, so I hadn't met many of the other students until 9th grade. Last Thursday when I arrived at school, I found 2 open parking spots next to each other and parked there. Everything was fine until the end of the day. My friends, Mark and Joe, were coming over to my house after school. When we got to my car, I saw that it was wrecked. The entire left side of my car was damaged. Both doors were heavily dented from back to front, my side view mirror was completely gone, the left taillight was smashed and the bumper was hanging off. Neither of the left doors could open, so I couldn't even get into the car. The vehicle that had been parked next to me was gone, but whoever was there had clearly caused the damage. Mark and Joe were shocked and I was just kneeling there in disbelief. I called my dad, who told me to stay put. He'd leave work and meet me. He called the police, but I was still in shock, so he spoke to them before they asked me what happened. I told them what I knew, which wasn't much, and they ended up driving me home while my dad stayed back to talk to them a little longer. Later, Mark, Joe, and I went back to my place and my dad arrived shortly after. He said the police would look into it, but since there were no cameras in the parking lot, there wasn't much evidence. Then Mark suddenly shouted that he might know who did it. He had texted his girlfriend and told her about my car. She mentioned seeing a girl named Annie driving with damage on the right side of her truck. Joe also texted his brother, who confirmed that he had seen Annie parked next to my car, as her bright red truck is pretty noticeable. Annie lives in another town, but we have some mutual friends and have hung out a few times. She drives a massive pickup truck, which she doesn't seem to need. Her mom is a teacher, her dad is an elementary school principal, and Annie works part-time at a grocery store. Mark, Joe, and I decided to drive over to Annie's house to check if her truck was damaged. When we got there, her truck was in the driveway and the right headlight was broken with scrapes on the right side of her doors. Annie came out of the house and I asked her if she had hit my car. She immediately freaked out, yelling, and then her dad came out, threatening to call the police if we didn't leave. So we left. The next morning, Friday, I was called into the principal's office. When I arrived, Annie, her dad, and her uncle, who happens to be the police chief, were already there. I tried to explain that I believed Annie had hit my car, but the principal, Mr. S., told me that there was a report stating I had harassed Annie at her house. I asked if I could call my dad to explain, but Mr. S. said the school has a zero-tolerance policy for harassment, and he suspended me. Before I left, the principal told me to just let it go, and then I could come back. Afterward, I texted my friends. Most of them said Annie was acting crazy and that they were on my side. However, a few told me that I should calm down since Annie probably didn't mean to hit my car. So, am I the asshole? Should I have just let it go? Sorry for the long post. Am I the asshole for calling out my grandparents in front of their friends and extended family for things they said to my mom? My parents and I am a 16-year-old female, spent Saturday with my dad's family. After a while, I noticed my mom had gone missing for a bit longer than usual, so I went looking for her and found her upset. She insisted that nothing was wrong. But about an hour later, I overheard my grandparents calling her a bad mom, so I stopped and admittedly eavesdropped on their conversation. They were saying my mom should be ashamed for crying where I might see her, questioning how my dad ever allowed her to raise me, and accusing her of abandoning me when I was a baby for weeks, supposedly not caring about me back then. They even called her a lunatic, and said she should be ashamed of herself for ruining my life. For context, my mom suffered from postpartum psychosis after I was born. She was very ill and had to spend 11 weeks in a hospital and treatment center to recover, as she was in serious condition. My dad tried to get her help, but initially, people dismissed his concerns. I was around 8 or 9 weeks old before anyone took him seriously, and they were finally able to get her the help she needed. Both of my parents were deeply traumatized by this experience, and it took my mom a long time to fully recover. Once she had, they decided not to have any more children to avoid risking another episode, choosing to focus on raising me. I've always known about this part of my family's history. Hearing my grandparents speak to my mom like that was awful. Mom walked away from them while I was still listening, and when she noticed me, she gently pulled me aside and said it was okay. Later, while a group of us were in the kitchen eating, my grandparents started making comments about how lucky some people were to have lots of grandchildren and how it helps when each child has more than one. My dad looked confused and annoyed by their comments. That's when I decided to confront them. I called them out, saying it was cruel to make jabs at my mom for not having more kids. I told them it was disgusting and that my mom didn't deserve the hurtful things they had said to her. They tried to dismiss it by saying I didn't understand and insisting that they loved me. I told them that didn't sound like love to me. I pointed out that calling my mom a lunatic and rubbing it in her face that she only had me, especially when they knew she was seriously ill after my birth, made it seem like I wasn't enough for them. I also said it was cruel to shame a woman who made the safest choice for her family. My dad was furious and demanded to know what was going on. My grandparents slipped up and ended up admitting that they had been saying these hurtful things to my mom behind everyone's back since I was a baby, making sure no one else would find out. They tried to lecture me about disrespecting them by calling them out, but my dad shut them down and told me and my mom to wait in the car. Later, I found out that some of my extended family members are upset with me for confronting my grandparents in front of others, and my grandparents are now calling me disrespectful. My dad has stood up for me, defending me to anyone who blamed me. Now, I wonder if I should have handled it more privately, by telling my dad instead of calling them out publicly. Am I the asshole? Am I the asshole for refusing to cover my friend's rent after she's been paying for our roommate's share for 2 months? Here's the situation. I am a 22-year-old female and I've been living with my best friend, 23 female, and 2 other roommates for about a year. At first, everything was going smoothly, but things have recently become more complicated. About 2 months ago, one of our roommates, 24 male, lost his job. While he's been looking for work, he's been asking my best friend to cover his portion of the rent and utilities. She has a full-time job and can technically afford to help him for a while, but she's also been asking me and our other roommate to contribute a bit more to cover his part, since she can't afford the entire rent on her own. I understand that everyone goes through tough times, and I recognize that he's trying to find work. However, this is where it starts to feel unfair. He isn't putting in a serious effort to secure a stable job. He's taken a few casual gigs here and there, but it's not enough, and he seems to be relying more on my best friend's generosity than on actively fixing his situation. To me, it feels like she's enabling him rather than motivating him to get back on his feet. I've spoken with her about this, and she says it's not a big deal because he's her friend, and she wants to help him out. I told her that I'm uncomfortable with the idea of her paying someone's rent when he isn't making enough of an effort to improve his circumstances. I also explained that I'm already struggling financially myself and can't keep covering additional expenses. Last night, I finally told her that I'm done contributing to this arrangement. If he doesn't start paying his share of the rent soon, I believe he should consider moving out. I don't think it's fair for me to pick up the slack simply because he's her friend, especially when he's not showing signs of working toward a solution. I told her that I can't continue helping cover for someone who isn't pulling their weight. She was really upset and said I was being cold-hearted and selfish. She accused me of not caring about him and argued that true friends support each other through difficult times. Now, some of our mutual friends are backing her up, saying that I'm being too harsh and that I'm not acting like a good friend. I'm feeling torn because I do want to support my best friend, but I don't think it's my responsibility to keep this going. Am I being unreasonable? Am I the asshole for not wanting to contribute to this situation anymore and suggesting he move out if he doesn't start paying his share? Am I the asshole for not letting my brother stay at my house? I am a 23-year-old single mom currently going through a divorce, and as you can imagine, it's been an incredibly stressful time. I haven't shared much about the divorce with my family because they didn't support my decision to leave. They thought I was foolish for walking away from a financially stable marriage. However, my decision wasn't just about money. I made this choice for my own well-being and for my child. Now, my older brother, 28 male, has been struggling with alcohol for some time. Every time he drinks, things spiral out of control. He's lost multiple jobs because he often doesn't show up after a night of drinking, and whenever he has money, it immediately goes to alcohol. Sadly, he also ends up in fights or other reckless situations. Over the past few years, we've had to cover damages, hospital bills, and even bribe officials to get him out of trouble, all without him facing any real consequences. Whenever I try to talk to him about it, he brushes me off, saying I'm too young to understand the stress he's under. My family usually sides with him, telling me that I'm being too pushy and should let him handle things his own way. Recently, he got into yet another fight, and my sister called to tell me that the other person involved was injured and had pressed charges. They wanted me to let him stay at my house so he could lay low for a while. I couldn't believe it. They expected me to open my home with my young son and everything else I'm going through right now. When I told them I couldn't do it, my mom said I was heartless and claimed I'd rather see him rot in jail than help him. I tried explaining that, with my son, my work, and the emotional toll of the divorce, I simply have too much on my plate to take responsibility for him as well. I genuinely believe my brother needs to face the consequences of his actions instead of relying on us to bail him out every time. I told my mom that he's a grown man, and if I'm too young to understand, then maybe it's time the adults handle it. She didn't take that well, and now my family is angry with me. So, am I the asshole for not letting my brother stay with me, knowing it might mean he finally faces some real consequences for his behavior? I'll keep you all updated on whether he ends up in jail because, honestly, he's lucky I didn't call the police myself. Am I the asshole for not telling my friend I'm pregnant sooner? Dear, I told my close friend I'm pregnant at 12 weeks, and she's hurt that I didn't tell her sooner. My close friend is upset with me for not sharing my pregnancy news with her earlier and because I told another friend, who has a child, before her. I told this other friend early on because I had a lot of questions, and it was helpful to have her support as someone who had been through it. Once we got our final first trimester test results at 12 weeks, I immediately told my parents and then my close friend. We have mutual friends, so I wanted her to hear it from me first, rather than from someone else. I also shared that I had experienced a miscarriage earlier in the year, which is difficult for me to talk about. She congratulated me and offered condolences for my miscarriage, but also slipped in a few passive-aggressive comments about feeling left out and how I could have told her sooner. I let it go to avoid any drama. A week later, she sent me a long text expressing how hurt she felt that I didn't tell her sooner, especially since I had told our other friend first. She said she felt like I don't trust her and that it was difficult because mutual friends had been asking her if I was pregnant, and she was out of the loop. She added that she's been crying over it and feels even more hurt that I hadn't told her about the miscarriage earlier. I'm generally a private person and don't get overly sentimental about baby stuff. It took us almost a year to conceive, and my first pregnancy had a lot of spotting. I didn't want to tell many people early, except the friend who had experienced it before, in case it ended in miscarriage, which it did. I didn't want to face the discomfort of telling people, never mind, I'm not pregnant. The whole journey was stressful, and with this second pregnancy, I didn't want to share the news until all the tests came back low risk. I understand that my friend may feel like I don't trust her, but that's not the case at all. This just wasn't about her. I value my privacy, and talking about the miscarriage is painful. I wish she could respect that instead of feeling hurt by it. While her feelings are valid, I also wish she had vented to someone else instead of to me. It's cast a shadow over my pregnancy announcement, and the more I think about it, the more I feel annoyed that she's made my pregnancy about her. Am I being unreasonable? Am I the asshole for telling my husband that we need to move out of his mom's upstairs bedroom? Not the asshole. My husband, 24 male, and I, 25 female, moved in with my husband's widowed mother at the beginning of 2024 to save for a house while I was pregnant with our first child. My husband works full-time, and I'm a stay-at-home mom to our newborn. We contribute a small monthly payment to his mom and occupy 2 of the 3 upstairs bedrooms. One serves as an office/living area, and the other is our bedroom/nursery. The third bedroom belongs to my husband's brother, who is a recent college graduate. We knew this arrangement would be challenging, but after 7 months, we've hit a particularly rough patch. Our plan was to move out of his mom's house sometime in 2025 and into our own home, but rising expenses and the current economy have slowed our savings significantly. Given the situation, we've had to rethink our plans, and living here has become increasingly uncomfortable and is putting a strain on our marriage. In this living situation, we have very little control over our environment, as we're constantly accommodating my mother-in-law and brother-in-law, who live differently from us. Respect for our personal space and time is inconsistent. For instance, sometimes the food I need during a rare break from the baby isn't in the fridge, or my mother-in-law talks over me when I'm with my husband downstairs. All these small inconveniences add up, especially as I navigate the challenges of being postpartum, learning to parent for the first time, and caring for a newborn who cries around the clock. My husband and I argue almost daily. I experience weekly emotional meltdowns that disrupt our routines, and I can't see how we'll make it through the upcoming holidays without more conflict. My husband is determined to stay here until we either 1, save enough for a down payment, or 2, he secures a higher paying job. However, neither of these options seems likely to happen anytime soon. Thankfully, my parents recently gifted us $10,000 to help us move out sooner before things get even harder. After receiving the gift, I told my husband that we should move into an apartment as soon as possible, but he completely freaked out. I made things worse by pushing the issue, which led to a huge argument about my frustrations with living here. Now, I'm seen as the bad guy for suggesting that we move out sooner than planned, and that we move into an apartment rather than waiting for a house. Am I the asshole for telling my wife that the house we're going to build won't have 5 extra rooms for her mom, her 3 brothers, and her cousin? Not the asshole. I was looking at house plans to submit to the town hall for approval for an acre we own in Minnesota. We're planning on a 4-bedroom house. 1 room for my wife and me, 1 for each of our 2 kids, and an extra room as a playroom/game room. When my wife saw the plans, she asked, "Where's my family staying?" Apparently, she had already promised her mom, her 3 brothers, and her cousin that they could move in with us. She's now furious, saying, "You only care about yourself. What about me?" I told her I never agreed to having her family move in with us from the start. Now she's even talking about selling the land to prove a point. Additional information. My wife and I co-own the land, which we purchased with the life insurance payout from the passing of our 1-year-old daughter in 2021. Since then, I've gotten a job in manufacturing with a federal government contractor. Her family has no stake or rights to this property. Recently, I received a call from the town's registrar regarding ownership change inquiries for the land. We actually own 2 parcels, and I offered to sell one of the parcels to her family at market value if they wanted a stake. She declined. The house construction will be funded by me alone. I even offered to build an accessory dwelling unit (ADU) on the property where her family could stay, but they would need to pay market rate for rent, about $900 per room. She rejected this idea as well. My current plan is to transfer my ownership of the land into a trust with my kids as the primary beneficiaries, with specific instructions that only direct descendants of mine may build or live on the property. Am I the asshole for missing plans I didn't know I had with him? Backstory: I'm 26 years old and he's 28. We have mutual friends and I've seen him at various events, but I don't think we'd ever spoken directly. He followed me on social media, and we started talking after he replied to one of my stories. When I posted about attending an event, he mentioned he'd love to do something like that with me. At first he suggested, "I'm a good chef, I could cook if you come over." I told him that I don't usually do home meetups for a first date, but I'd be open to other plans. He apologized and suggested we go out somewhere, and I agreed. We kept chatting and he didn't mention the plans again, but we moved our conversation to texting, where he messaged fairly often. Fast forward, he finally asked me out on a date, so I asked what he had in mind and when. His response was, "Honestly, if you're not down, that's cool. Just tell me to leave." I thought maybe this was a reaction to how I'd asked. I assured him that I was interested and asked when he was available. He mentioned Friday through Sunday, but I told him I'd be attending a friend's wedding that weekend. I suggested that we could discuss other possible dates, maybe the following week. He told me his family would be visiting then, so he couldn't. I replied that we should keep in touch. The weekend, on Friday, I didn't hear from him and I muted my phone to avoid feeling anxious. I focused on my friend's wedding events. By Saturday, I checked my phone and still saw no messages. Midday, he finally texted saying, "Well, it's not like I was going to be free this weekend, but I take it you aren't either. Sorry." I responded by suggesting we revisit our plans, and he agreed, mentioning he'd be free on Monday. However, this was short notice and I had work during the time he suggested. I explained this and he asked if I was genuinely interested in meeting him. I reassured him, asked if he was available that Friday, but he responded without directly addressing that part. Since then he's been texting me with a noticeably different tone. His replies have become shorter and more spaced out, and he doesn't acknowledge things I say. I'm starting to wonder if I was supposed to be more specific in making plans. My sister advised me to leave it alone as he seems upset. TLDR, we're having scheduling issues around a first date. He previously said he was unavailable for the weekend but then seemed to change his mind, leaving me uncertain if I did something wrong. I've tried to explain that I'm interested but he seems distant now. My friend also saw him on dating apps, so I don't want to waste his time if he's actively looking, yet I also don't want to feel brushed off like this. Am I the asshole for agreeing to a relationship with my best friend's ex without telling her first? I'm a 14-year-old pansexual female, at least I think I am, and I recently developed feelings for my best friend's ex-boyfriend. For privacy I'll call him Peter, and my best friend Eve. Peter, a 15-year-old straight male, recently confessed his feelings for me during a FaceTime call, and I admitted that I felt the same. The main things holding us back from starting a relationship are, first, that we live far apart, and second, that he's Eve's ex-boyfriend. We all live in different states, and Peter and I got to know each other better after Eve and I added him to a group call one day. We hit it off immediately and started talking regularly for about a month. When Peter confessed his feelings, I was both surprised and excited. Although he's not my usual type, he's been really kind and can't seem to get him off my mind. Eve, however, has told me she's uncomfortable with me even talking privately with Peter. They dated for only a week, but they did share some intimate moments, including explicit photos over FaceTime while they were together. Right now, Eve is in a healthy relationship, and I'd hate to be the one to disrupt her happiness or put a strain on her mental health. At this point, it feels almost impossible to call things off with Peter, and I'm overwhelmed. This is my first experience with romance, while Peter is more experienced. I don't want to keep this from Eve because that feels sneaky and disrespectful, especially since we've been best friends for years. I realize it sounds selfish, but she's told me she's over Peter and has moved on with her new boyfriend. Peter is the first person who's openly had a crush on me, and I'd hate myself more if I kept this a secret from her. Peter and I have been talking for over a month and recently became a bit more romantic over the past few days. He's been very flirty, and although we agreed to take things slowly, we said love you on the second day, which felt like moving too fast. We haven't labeled our relationship, but he's told me he'd date me if we lived closer. If that were the case, I might feel pressure to take things further physically, which I'm nervous about. I know we need to tell Eve soon, but I'm dreading her reaction. I'm already in over my head, and I'm torn between my feelings for Peter and my friendship with Eve. Peter is the only other person besides Eve who knows I'm pansexual, and he's been incredibly supportive about it. I don't want a boy to come between my best friend and me, but the stress of the situation is giving me panic attacks, and I really need some advice. Would I be the asshole for exploring a relationship with my best friend's ex, even though it could risk our friendship? Am I the asshole for making noise at night and upsetting my roommate? I work the evening shift and usually get home around midnight. I have a mechanical keyboard, and I enjoy gaming and chatting quietly with friends late at night. My roommate lives in a separate room across from mine and is a very light sleeper. She's told me that I make too much noise at night and that it disturbs her sleep. To try to accommodate her, I bought O-rings for my keyboard, a sound dampening accessory, and even put a blanket on the wall facing her room to help reduce the noise. Despite these efforts, she doesn't want me to use my keyboard at all during the night and has also asked that I avoid talking altogether. I told her that while it's reasonable to want some quiet at night, I can't be completely silent. We're both paying rent and I feel we both have a right to use our space. She insists that I'm still not being quiet enough. I finally told her that at this point I've done what I can, and if she's still bothered, it's not really my problem. She got very upset and now I'm not sure what she plans to do. Am I the asshole? Am I the asshole for staying late to help a coworker making my boyfriend wait? The place I work, I'm 22 female, has a trash compactor, and at the end of the night the closing cleaner loads it and starts it up. However, minors aren't allowed to operate the compactor alone. It's dangerous and the path to the compactor is incredibly sketchy. To get there, you go down this twisted, winding hallway that feels like something out of a horror movie. Right now, I don't have a car because mine was totaled in an accident, and I'm waiting on insurance money to buy a new one. My boyfriend, 23 male, has been kind enough to give me rides to and from work, despite having a sprained knee, which I really appreciate. On Sunday night, one of my coworkers, a 16-year-old boy, was the closing cleaner and needed someone to go with him to the compactor. The only other person available was a really creepy guy who often acts inappropriately around our high school-aged co-workers, and I didn't want to leave my co-worker alone with him. I care about this kid, he's sweet though kind of short and chubby, so he wouldn't be able to defend himself easily. So he asked if I could go down with him and I agreed. My phone was nearly dead and no one had a charger, so I texted my boyfriend that I'd be out around 11:30, then powered off my phone to save battery. After helping my coworker, I finally got to my boyfriend's car around 11:50. When I got in, he immediately asked why I'd taken so long. I explained the situation, but he responded, "Why couldn't someone else do it?" I told him the managers and other staff had closing jobs that took longer, so they couldn't help. He then said, "Don't make me wait like that again, the kid can deal with it." I was taken aback and replied, "That's messed up. I'm not going to make him go down there with a creepy guy just to save you 20 minutes. He responded, "I'm doing you a favor, I don't want to have to wait." I asked why he had to be that way and he said, "Because I'm not waiting around." We were already driving at this point and I told him, "So you want me to just leave my coworker hanging to save you 20 minutes? He shouted, "Yes, I'm doing you a favor." I apologized and just sat in silence. We barely spoke the rest of the night. Now, I'm starting to feel guilty and wonder if making him wait was an asshole move. EDA. Some of the creepy things this coworker has done include talking about how attractive some high school girls are to two of our coworkers, without knowing their ages, prying into people's sex lives and personal lives, and being overly touchy though not inappropriately. Am I the asshole for keeping our daughter from my sister? I'm seeking advice on a difficult family situation involving my sister, 35, which is affecting my partner, our young child, and me. I'm 29, and my sister and I have always had a complicated relationship. Her behavior often aligns with narcissistic traits, creating constant chaos in her relationships, whether with family, friends, or romantic partners. My parents have tried to support her, despite their own imperfections. My mom can be outspoken and my dad can be distant, but they've always done their best. In return, my sister has been verbally harsh, often criticizing my dad's character and mocking my mom's use of antidepressants, which my mom takes due to the strain of their relationship. It's difficult to watch, especially as her behavior now impacts my own family. My sister has a 5-year-old daughter whom I adore. She had her daughter with a partner she never intended to marry, essentially using him to have a child without his knowledge. Now that I've found a loving partner and we have a daughter of our own, my sister's behavior has become a more serious issue. Recently, she hosted a birthday party for her daughter. We couldn't attend the whole event, so we stopped by briefly to celebrate and then joined a family dinner the following day. We arrived at the dinner around 4 p.m. but planned to leave by 6:30 to accommodate our baby's sleep schedule. As we prepared to leave, my sister made a dismissive comment questioning if we really had to go. She then made additional remarks to others nearby, making us feel uncomfortable for prioritizing our baby's needs. While I'm used to her behavior, my partner felt hurt and publicly criticized. Later, my partner sent my sister a respectful message, sharing her feelings and asking that such comments not be made in the future. My sister responded that her comment was only meant for family, me, and not directed at my partner, which felt dismissive. This response deeply upset my partner, who now feels the need to distance herself, and our daughter, from my sister for her own mental well-being. My sister then accused my partner of using our child as a weapon. Initially, I thought distancing might be too extreme, but I understand my partner's point of view. She feels that if someone can't respect her as a mother, they shouldn't have a close relationship with our child. She's open to resolving things if my sister can apologize and commit to being respectful, but my sister seems uninterested in understanding our perspective. This situation is causing tension throughout our family. My partner feels isolated, I feel torn, and my parents are struggling with their own views. My mom and uncle understand our position but worry we might be taking things too far. I'm reaching out to see if anyone has been through a similar family struggle. How did you handle it and what was the outcome? Am I the asshole for losing my patience with my boyfriend who hasn't worked in 3 years? I'm a 34-year-old woman and I've been with my boyfriend, also 34, for 2.5 years. When we first started dating, he promised he'd go back to work by fall 2023, as he hadn't worked in nearly 3 years. Over the past year, we've been living at his apartment. He's been paying the mortgage from his savings, while I've covered our groceries and dining out. Although he spent 6 to 12 hours a day playing video games, he was a great boyfriend and we rarely fought. I loved him and treated him well. When fall 2023 arrived, He told me he still wasn't ready to go back to work and would wait until spring 2024 to start applying. I was worried because a 2-year break from work is a long time, and his management might have moved on without him. It was also disappointing that he didn't follow through on his promise. By March 2024 he did apply for a job, but the position was later retracted. After that, he waited 8 months for another position to open up. During this time I began to worry about our future together. I asked him multiple times to look for another job or take some courses while he waited. I tried to express my concerns politely, explaining that I have anxieties about our future because I want to buy a house, start a family, and well, there's my biological clock to consider. Each time I shared my concerns he either got upset, saying I didn't believe in him, or ignored me. The last few times I brought it up, he straight up told me to bite my tongue. Over time I felt increasingly hurt as he seemed to dismiss my feelings and opinions. Now it's the end of fall 2024, he still hasn't found a job, and he's decided not to apply elsewhere. Last week we found out he didn't get hired for yet another position with his desired company, and we can't get pre-approved for a mortgage because he doesn't have any income. He was devastated and I was frustrated that he hadn't listened to me sooner. To top it off, it was an incredibly rough week. We were moving, I had a bladder infection, learned I'd have to rehome my dog due to allergies, got my period, and was still going to work every day. I'm usually a calm person, but I lost it. I yelled and told him I was losing respect and attraction for him because he just plays video games all day. I gave him an ultimatum: get a job within a month or we're done. The next day I came home from work and immediately apologized. I told him I was ashamed of how I'd acted and wished I could take it all back. He responded by breaking up with me, saying I hadn't been there to support him when he needed it most, and then he moved out. So, am I the asshole here? Am I the asshole for not covering the bill for my friends? I am a 20-year-old woman, and recently I met up with 3 of my high school friends, also 20-year-old women, for dinner. We hadn't seen each other in a while, and while it wasn't my idea to meet up, I was invited and was really excited since it had been a year since the 4 of us were all together. When the check came to the table, it wasn't split. We never discussed splitting it, and our waiter just dropped it off in passing. My friends started making comments about being in school or out of work, insinuating that I should be the one to pay. 2 of them are full-time college students with work-study jobs, and the third works full-time but is currently between jobs. I work full-time as a night registered nurse, which I started in June. I was a little taken aback since no one had mentioned that I'd be expected to cover the entire bill, which was about $90 before tip. I told them I'd pay for my own meal and cover the tip, but I wanted them to Venmo me the cost of what they had ordered. They seemed offended, gave me a few side eyes, but reluctantly agreed. They continued to make comments about how I had a big girl job and could have covered the bill easily, calling me selfish for asking them to pay me back. I told them it was rude to expect me to pay without suggesting it beforehand and that I didn't think I was being selfish. This happened a couple of weeks ago, and they've since made jokes and remarks in our group chat about the incident. I know that at least one of them is actually upset with me about it. Am I the asshole? Am I the asshole if I change my wedding RSVP after having my +1 rescinded? I have a friend from college who is getting married in 2.5 weeks. I received the invitation just a week ago, and the invite included a QR code that directed me to their wedding website on the knot. The wedding is on a Friday, which is very last minute, and I'll need to take time off work to attend. I'm friends with the bride from college, and we have one mutual friend who is also invited. However, our mutual friend isn't able to attend, so I won't know anyone at the wedding except for the bride. When I went to RSVP on the knot, it gave me the option to add a +1. I've never seen this option before without specifically being offered a +1, so I assumed I was allowed to bring someone. I'm not in a long-term relationship, but since I won't know anyone else at the wedding, I asked my friend to attend with me and added her as my +1 in the RSVP. A few days later I received a text from the bride telling me that I don't have a +1 and shouldn't have added my friend. She said I can't bring her and still wants me to come, encouraging me to make friends with other guests, even though I won't know anyone. I'm guessing the bride and groom may have mistakenly allowed me a +1 in the RSVP system, but she didn't apologize or clarify any misunderstanding. She just told me I shouldn't have added anyone. I have pretty significant social anxiety and now feel very nervous about attending the wedding alone. I get very uncomfortable in situations where I don't know anyone, and I'm now reconsidering using my paid time off to attend a last-minute wedding where I'll be completely on my own. Am I the asshole if I change my RSVP to no, since I won't know anyone at the event? I feel conflicted because I technically said I was available when I RSVP'd yes, but it was on the assumption that I'd be able to bring someone along to keep me company. Am I the asshole for laughing and saying, "What goes around comes around," because my uncle's daughter is hanging out with boys just like he was? Following my 16-year-old Uncle Tommy's own definition of whores, Tommy was the biggest whore back in the day. He used to mess around with multiple girls at once, chasing them everywhere like a dog or something. My mom and aunts would constantly tell Tommy it was wrong, but he didn't care, and my grandma thought it was cute and even encouraged him. Fast forward to now, and Tommy is furious because my cousin Mariah, who's 14, is talking to boys who are exactly like he was. Tommy has been arguing with Mariah's mom, Sophia, because Mariah is spending time with these boys and texting them instead of focusing on her schoolwork. Tommy even got grandma involved, and now both of them are blaming Sophia for who Mariah is talking to. The other day, grandma was over at our house, talking about how worried she and Tommy are about Mariah. I couldn't hold back and started laughing. Grandma told me it wasn't funny and that Mariah shouldn't be behaving this way or hanging around with skirt chasers. I responded, "What goes around comes around," and basically told her that it's karma. Tommy used to be a skirt chaser himself, and now he's dealing with his own daughter hanging out with boys just like he was. Grandma got so mad that she left early, which she never does. My mom and two of my aunts were there as well, and all three of them agreed that what I said was funny and technically true. But they also said that I'm old enough to know this is one of those things you laugh about privately, not to their faces. They pointed out it's something an adult should discuss seriously, not something to bring up as a joke. I know they're probably right, but still, am I the asshole? Am I the asshole for laughing at my sister's relationship troubles? I'm a 28-year-old woman and I have a younger sister, Emily, who's 25. She was with her high school sweetheart, Jake, from the time she was 14. They dated all through high school and college, and honestly they were the perfect couple. Jake was incredibly thoughtful. He would surprise her with gifts, plan elaborate dates, and he genuinely seemed to light up whenever she was around. They even talked about getting married. Fast forward to a few months ago, Emily cheated on Jake and ended the relationship to be with her affair partner, Mark. Since then, she's been complaining to me about how Mark doesn't do any of the romantic things Jake used to do. Apparently, Mark doesn't surprise her with gifts, and their dates feel pretty lackluster compared to the relationship she had with Jake. Last week, while I was on the phone with her, she started venting about how unsatisfied she feels in her new relationship. I don't know what came over me, but I just burst out laughing. I mean, she cheated on the guy who treated her like a queen, and now she's complaining that the new guy isn't measuring up? It just felt so absurd to me. Emily got really upset and told me I was being insensitive. I tried to explain that I wasn't laughing at her pain, but that it felt like poetic justice considering how she treated Jake. Now she's barely speaking to me and I'm starting to feel guilty. Am I the asshole for laughing at my sister's relationship troubles after she cheated on someone who treated her so well? Am I the asshole for asking my boyfriend to quit his sport? Update: are people not seeing where I asked him to stop playing? He can coach, mentor, watch, etc., and that's fine with me. It's the constant injuries, the financial drain, and then him yelling at me that I'm the reason he's broke that made me ask him to stop playing. I'm a 23-year-old woman and I've been with my boyfriend, who's 28, for about 2 years. He's been playing rugby throughout our relationship and started about a year before we met. Rugby feels like the third person in our relationship, so I finally asked him to stop playing. Was I wrong? Every Saturday is rugby day, which means he wakes up, watches a game, plays a game with his team, then watches another game afterward, usually finishing off with YouTube highlight reels until he goes to bed. He also has 2-hour practices every Tuesday and Thursday. Additionally, he coaches a high school team and assists in coaching a college team. After each game, practice, or scrimmage, he comes home with some sort of injury or is simply debilitated by pain. He's constantly covered in bruises and cuts. He's been to the hospital for a separated shoulder, a split eyebrow, a split lip that went all the way through the muscle and fat, and the most recent incident involved turf beads in his eye, which almost blinded him, not exaggerating. He'll take off work for games and practices, cancel dates, and miss important events for them. When my family home caught fire, we had a fundraiser. He tried to skip it for a game. He only attended because the game was canceled. During my birthday dinner, he asked if we could rush it so he could make it to practice. We can't go out or do anything on rugby days. We can't be intimate because he's too sore, and he can't even function on those days. He always says, it's tough on rugby days. But at this point, Saturday is rugby day has turned into every day is rugby day. He often gets stressed about money since we live in an expensive area, yet he always seems to have money for new cleats, new studs for his cleats, joint tape, and team memorabilia. Basically, he always has money for rugby like an addict always has money for a fix. To be clear, I'm genuinely glad he has something he enjoys. I'm happy he coaches, that his students look up to him, and that it boosts his self-esteem. We've both met some amazing people through the rugby community. But the 1 a.m. calls that he's in the hospital, getting yelled at because he's broke, catering to him after every game because he's sore, consoling him when he's devastated over losing a starting position, and having to live, breathe and eat rugby because he does, it's just too much. When I finally asked him to stop playing, he freaked out. He told me I don't appreciate the things he cares about, and that I should be thankful he has rugby, or he would be dead. He said he has nothing else. Now I feel horrible. Am I the asshole? Am I the asshole for putting a lock on my bedroom door in the apartment I share with my husband and his family member? Sorry it's long. My husband and I live with his sibling, G, in an apartment that is paid for by his family. G frequently brings friends over, and one of them, Al, is a regular guest who practically lives with us at this point. I tend to avoid the common areas because I get anxious and uncomfortable around so many people, but I don't mind keeping to myself. I have a vanity room where I keep my clothes and jewelry, and I installed a small camera there for peace of mind, as no one locks the apartment door, day or night, and I wanted to protect my valuables. Later, I decided to put a lock on the vanity room door as an additional security measure. Recently, while my husband and I weren't home, G allowed their friend L to enter our personal space without permission, supposedly to charge a device. This was especially unsettling because my husband and I have private, personal items in our bedroom, and it felt like a serious invasion of our privacy. I feel that G was also at fault for allowing a frequent guest to enter such a personal space, especially since it is our private room as a couple. After that incident, my husband and I decided to put a lock on our bedroom door for additional privacy. I even explained to Elle beforehand that it was for privacy and safety, given the constant traffic in our apartment. Everything seemed fine until G texted my husband, angrily accusing us of being paranoid, and saying locks and cameras aren't necessary because they were raised with trust as a family. Since then, G has been distant and I've been avoiding G and L as I feel like they're both upset with me. I tried to reconcile with G, but they were dismissive and rude, leaving me feeling like I was back in school dealing with bullies. It's especially hurtful because I had opened up to both G and L about some personal struggles, thinking they would understand why I would want some extra privacy. Now, I feel like I'm an outsider in my own home. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for putting a lock on my bedroom door and wanting more privacy? Would I be the asshole for buying a fridge and refusing to let my roommate and his girlfriend use it, even though they'd have no other way to keep their food fresh? I, 26M, live with my roommate, 33M, who is also my coworker. We initially moved in together to share the cost of rent and groceries, and we had planned to buy a fridge together. However, when his girlfriend, 28F, moved in about 5 months ago, the dynamic changed and that conversation was dropped. Now, we each buy our own groceries and kitchen supplies, including separate toiletries and even toilet paper. I feel like a third wheel in my own home, and I no longer enjoy the convenience of sharing space with my roommate. I wanted a communal living situation, but it has become more like separate lives. Currently, I don't have a fridge and I'm thinking about buying one, especially since holiday sales are coming up. However, my roommate is unwilling to contribute to the cost, and I'm concerned about sharing it with them since they seem to want everything separate now. When we both get home from work, his girlfriend is usually in the kitchen cooking, and I have to wait an hour or two to use the space. I've suggested she cook earlier so I can use the kitchen, but my roommate prefers not to eat cold food. This situation has made me rely on takeout, which feels wasteful and affects my groceries as my fresh food often goes bad. The bathroom situation is also frustrating. I handle cleaning it properly using detergent and bleach, while they only mop with water. If cleaning supplies run out, I end up replacing them, even if it means living with a dirty bathroom until I can afford more. This makes me worried about how they would maintain a fridge if I shared one with them, especially since their version of cleaning the kitchen is just doing the dishes and putting them away. I've tried discussing house rules and boundaries with my roommate, but he believes we should mind our own business as long as the rent is paid. I don't feel comfortable addressing his girlfriend directly, as I've noticed my roommate tends to side with her in conflicts. This makes it awkward for me to assert my needs. My coworkers have said I would be the asshole if I bought a fridge and didn't share it with them, which adds to my confusion about what the right thing to do is. Considering everything, I'm thinking of buying my own fridge. Would I be the asshole if I didn't share it with them, especially given that they seem to want everything separate? Would I be the asshole if I charge for a cover-up of a nasty tattoo I did? I've been tattooing for a year now, and this is the first cover-up I'm doing of a tattoo I did myself. A few weeks ago, I tattooed a saying in Arabic on a girl's back. We both thought it translated to appreciate life, because the translation was right under the words in Arabic in the photo she sent me. A few days ago she messaged me saying she wanted me to delete the picture of her tattoo off my page because it actually translates to something awful. I was shocked, so I ran the photo through Translate Lens myself multiple times, and it turned out she was right. The translation was gross. Normally, I check the meaning of tattoos in foreign languages, but I didn't check this one because the translation came with the reference photo. I quickly deleted the post and offered to work on a cover-up together if she was open to it. She agreed and I finished the design. She likes it and we're planning to do it soon. Here's the issue, I feel guilty about this whole situation because it's never happened to me before. I feel bad that I put something that awful on someone's body, and while I'm happy to cover it, I feel really ashamed of charging her for the cover-up. It's my fault I didn't check the translation, and I'm afraid she might think the cover-up is free as a form of apology. I don't want to make her feel like I'm just trying to charge her for something that I messed up. She may also think that because we have a mutual friend, I'm offering this as an apology, but honestly, I don't even know if I did anything wrong. Maybe I'm overthinking it. I'm conflicted because on one hand I want to help her and I feel bad, but on the other hand, this is a complex cover-up, and I don't really have the financial means to give it away for free. If she were a close friend, I would totally do it for free, but she's a friend of a friend's girlfriend, and I'm unsure where we stand. So, would I be the asshole if I charge her for this cover-up? If I do, I'll definitely cut the price down a lot. Am I the asshole for telling my husband to return a puppy? My husband and I are in our mid-40s and have been married for 15 years with 2 kids, ages 14 and 11. A couple of years ago, our senior dog passed away. Since then we've talked about getting another dog, but we agreed it would be better to wait until the kids graduate high school. Dogs are a huge commitment and I don't have time. Between the kids' activities 7 nights a week and working 2 jobs, 50 hours a week, I'm stretched thin. My husband works full-time too, but he works from home 3 days a week. Yesterday I came home to a surprise. A puppy. I was really angry because I had made it clear that I didn't want another dog right now. The kids were excited but I felt blindsided. He said it was my birthday gift, but I pushed back, saying that getting a dog is a family decision and I felt disrespected. He flew into a rage, threatened separation and spent the night elsewhere. When he came home today, I apologized for suggesting that he got the dog because he wanted it, instead of it being a heartfelt gift. But I told him he needed to return the dog. He mentioned separation again and said I treat him like shit. Am I the asshole for insisting he return the puppy? Am I the asshole for yelling at my mom after my brother ran away? My family is pretty religious and conservative. I have my own opinions but I usually keep quiet and just avoid my family as much as I can. My brother, 20, still lives at home and he's always been more out there. He's very open-minded and artistic, which has often clashed with our parents and sisters. He was a really good volleyball player in high school but quit his senior year just to spite our parents, so you can probably imagine the kind of guy he is. But he's the only boy, so our parents let it go. Recently he acted in a silly amateur film for one of his friends in which he kisses a boy. I don't care about it, but the film wasn't a secret, and someone we know came across it and sent it to our parents who kicked him out. My younger sister and her husband offered to take him in, but my brother left less than a week later because our brother-in-law was being a jerk about the film. Now no one knows where he is and everyone is pissed. Often angry. I only know he's alive because he's texted me a few times. My mom calls the family over almost every day to play the blame game, and yesterday it was my turn. She basically said that, as the oldest, I didn't do my job and led him astray because I failed as a sister or some crap. I got so angry I told her to shut the hell up and that this is more her fault than mine. It's a big deal in our family to disrespect her like that, so everyone was upset with me for yelling at mom and breaking her heart, even more after what my brother did. I told them to stop acting like victims and that they'd better pray he decides to see any of us again. Then I left. I feel better, but now the entire family is angry at me, especially since my brother isn't around to take their anger. I wish I could run away too, but I have responsibilities tying me here. Now, I'm wondering if I'm the asshole and if I should apologize. Am I the asshole? Am I the asshole for not leaving my estate to my severely disabled brother? I, 33F, received a terminal diagnosis earlier this year. I have a couple of years at best to get everything in order before I won't have the cognitive ability to do so anymore. I've been working with a lawyer and an end-of-life care social worker to make sure everything goes as smoothly as possible and that my wishes are respected. My family situation is complicated. My parents were never married and my dad passed away from the same condition I now have when I was 12. He never remarried, so his assets were put in a trust for me by my grandparents. My mom married after they broke up and had my half-brother, 26M, who is severely mentally disabled. He has the cognitive level of a 7-year-old in an adult's body, and he's very challenging to care for, even with all the resources they have. My mom and stepdad struggle financially, and they tried hard to get control of my trust while I lived with them, but they couldn't. I occasionally help them out financially, but it feels like my mom treats me as an emergency fund rather than as her daughter. My stepdad has always been bitter about the financial aspect, especially since my dad's family is well off. I don't share much about my life with them because they often get passive-aggressive and guilt-trippy. Now that I know I'm on borrowed time, I've been trying to talk more with my mom. We've never had a great relationship, but I wanted to try to resolve some issues. Since my diagnosis, she's been nicer and more concerned, so I thought it was okay to open up a bit. I didn't want her to be blindsided or feel obligated to take on anything, as I've appointed another family member to handle my medical and financial power of attorney. I explained that I'd arranged for my own care so she wouldn't feel burdened, and she was thankful for that. But then, she brought up how she had always hoped I'd be the one to ensure my brother was taken care of after she was gone and assumed that, in a way, I still would be. She suggested that whatever I leave behind could go into his care fund, and she'd make sure he knew it was from his big sister. Here's where I might be the asshole. I'm not leaving anything to my mom or my brother. I don't have kids, but I've been the favorite auntie to my best friend's 2 children for their entire lives. They are the light of my life and I spend a lot of time with them. My best friend and I have been through a lot together. She and her husband have been the ones going with me to appointments and letting me stay with them when I was too sick for meds to be home alone. I plan to leave whatever remains of my estate to her kids for college. I know the money could help secure better care for my half-brother and relieve some of my mom's burden, but I feel I want to help someone else now. Edit. Thank you for the kind messages. To answer a few questions. A. I'm not close to my half-brother at all. I didn't meet him until my dad passed, and the 6 years I lived around him were challenging and sometimes frightening. I haven't seen him in person in 15 years. I doubt he even understands that he has a sister, or what that would mean. I care about his welfare as much as I would any other mentally disabled person, but I don't feel a familial bond just because we share DNA. I've already contributed a fair amount to help my mom stay solvent to care for him, so one could argue he's already benefited significantly. As much as my mom may wish it, I would never have taken on legal responsibility for him after her passing. His father's family could step in if they chose. B. I am working with a strong team to get things in order. My estate lawyer and financial advisor are prepared to lock everything down once I finalize my decisions about my assets. I trust my executor, so the logistics and legal planning are under control. I just need to make a few hard decisions. Reflecting on some of the responses, I'm considering closing the chapter on my relationship with my mom and her family. I've always hoped that she cared in her own way and that our relationship could improve, but I'm not sure I want to spend what time I have left chasing that. The social worker offered to set up family sessions with a counselor specializing in terminal family issues, so I may let that be my guide. Am I the asshole for making a woman lose a costume contest? I'm the events chair of my fraternity this semester, and I organized our Halloween party, which took place yesterday. Every year we host a big costume contest. It costs $5 to enter and the winner takes the pot. With around 30 to 50 entries each year, the prize is pretty significant. This year we had 40 people enter with about 160 people attending. In the past, there's been one girl who always wins. A lot of my fraternity brothers have a thing for her. Her costumes are usually the typical sorority girl style: a short skirt, boots, fishnet leggings, a bra or corset, and some animal ears with light face paint. Now, I'll admit my costume wasn't that creative either, just angel wings, white shorts, and a halo. So I get that people dress to look good more than for originality. But I figured that even though she looked great, the contest should be about creativity, not just who looks hottest. For the contest, she dressed as a bee, similar to her usual, with a short skirt and a revealing top. When the votes came in, she won by 1 vote, but I hadn't voted yet. I cast my vote and my vice chairman agreed with me and voted too, which put her in second place. When I announced the results, she was visibly upset. She's won the last 4 years, so this was a shock for her. Later, one of my fraternity brothers who was upset about it, told her I intentionally voted against her because I didn't like her, which isn't true. I'm honestly neutral about her. She confronted me, accused me of having a problem with her, and we argued. I told her it wasn't a contest for the sluttiest costume, but for the best costume, and she should be glad we created a runner-up prize of $50 for her. We ended up getting separated after the argument. Now, several of my fraternity brothers are mad at me for upsetting her. Am I the asshole for asking my landlady to pay for the ice cream her grandchildren ate and the notebook they tore? For some context, I'm a student in my final year and living off my savings, so I don't have much money. I rent a room near my university from a lady who also rents out rooms to 2 other university students, so it's typically just adults in the house. Recently, my landlady's grandchildren have been visiting. There are 3 kids between the ages of 2 and 7. Normally, we leave our doors open around the house because it's just us adults and we all trust each other. But with the kids running around, I started keeping my door closed, though not locked. One afternoon, I came back to my room feeling that something was off, as though someone had been there and tried to put things back as they were. I was a bit nervous, so I asked my best friend, who rents another room, if he'd come in, but he said no. Then I noticed a bookmark on the floor. When I went to check in the kitchen, I found my special notebook, a birthday gift from my best friend a few years ago with a cute cat design, under a table. It was dirty, torn, and unusable. The landlady saw me almost crying. Stationery and gifts are special to me, and she offered to pay for a new one, but unfortunately that one is discontinued. Later, I decided to relax with some ice cream, which was a treat since my mom had sent me some extra money. But when I opened the freezer, I saw that the kids had eaten all of it, about a liter. The landlady doesn't know about the ice cream yet, but today I want to ask her to cover the cost of both the notebook and the ice cream. I feel conflicted because I don't want to seem rude, but I don't have a lot of extra money, and having my things eaten and broken has left me feeling very frustrated. I've now started locking my door. Update: it went well. I talked to her and she was understanding. She even asked if I'd found a replacement for the notebook. She also gave me a plate of homemade food, which is honestly a lifesaver as a student. I appreciate everyone's advice. I felt hesitant about asking, because I have a soft spot for kids. Regarding privacy, we've discussed it, and she assured me the kids were scolded and warned not to enter other rooms. Luckily, I didn't have anything dangerous at their reach. Am I the asshole for what I said to my fiancé's dad's wife? My fiancé, 27-year-old male, and I, 26-year-old female, are engaged and currently planning our wedding. I'm walking down the aisle with my 2 brothers since our parents have both sadly passed away. My fiancé wants his older sisters to walk him down the aisle, as he doesn't see why we both can't walk together. He also wanted to include them as much as possible, and he plans to dance with them during our reception. His dad's wife recently found out about this and wanted to be the one walking him down the aisle and dancing with him. However, my fiancé, along with both of his sisters, do not have the best relationship with her. While their relationship with their dad is relatively okay, not very close but not overly distant either, the relationship with his wife is a different story. My fiancé first met her when he was 10, and his sisters were 13 and 15. Their mom had passed away just a year earlier, and their dad's decision to remarry so quickly added strain to their relationship, as they felt he didn't consider their feelings. Initially, my fiancé thought she was okay, but as their wedding approached, he realized she wanted to take on a more maternal role. She wanted his sisters as her bridesmaids and wanted my fiancé as her son, to walk her down the aisle. None of them wanted to do this. After their wedding, she pushed to step into the role of mother for my fiancé, which created tension and discomfort. My fiancé felt she was forcing the issue, while she felt he should be more open to the idea of having a second mother. Over time, it became clear to her that he didn't view her as a mother figure at all, seeing her only as his dad's wife. Recently, his dad's wife requested to walk him down the aisle and dance with him at our wedding. He said no. This led to an argument, with her claiming she feels like his mother, and him making it clear that he has never considered her a mother. When she couldn't get him to change his mind, she tried to approach me, using my background of being adopted to make her case. She told me that, as an adoptee, I should understand that family isn't defined by blood. While that's true for me, my fiancé doesn't feel this way. For him, his mom was his true parent because she raised him and was there for him, similar to how I feel about my adoptive parents. I told her that it was ultimately my fiancé's decision, and I wouldn't force him into anything he doesn't want. She replied that, for the future of my family, I should push him, especially as a woman who has no genetic family. This comment hit a nerve, and I responded that her approach wasn't winning any points with me and that I would never betray my fiancé for her. I also told her to back off and accept that she doesn't have a place in their hearts and that forcing herself onto them won't help. She was furious, called me a bad daughter-in-law, and later texted me demanding an apology. Am I the asshole? Am I the asshole for asking my roommate to close the door when she's having sex? My roommate, 28-year-old female, and I, 21-year-old female, have been living together for about 8 months now, and we generally get along really well. We've had some issues, mainly because I'm a bit messier than she is, but I've always thought we had good communication and usually managed to talk things out to reach a solution. Over these 8 months, my boyfriend, 23-year-old male, has come over many times, and whenever he spends the night, I always check in with my roommate the next day to make sure we weren't being too loud. So far, there have been no complaints about him being over. Today, my roommate brought over the guy she's currently seeing. He's been over a few times before and I don't usually mind. However, today they came home while I was sleeping. I've been going to bed around 8:30 p.m. due to seasonal depression, and I woke up to the sound of them having sex. This hadn't happened before and I decided to go outside to give them more privacy. On my way out, I noticed that her bedroom door was wide open. Once I was outside, I texted her saying, "Hey, sorry to say this, but can you please close your door? I can hear everything. I came outside now, but if you can please?" Her response was simply, "Sorry, I never told you when you were too noisy with your visits." I immediately felt bad, apologized, and said that she could have mentioned it to me before if it was an issue. She replied with, "Okay." I try to be more understanding. I didn't mean to embarrass her, I just thought maybe she could close the door as she has done in the past. Now she says she can't close it because of her cat, who needs access to roam and use the litter box. I wonder if I should have just put on some music and not said anything, but I assumed she would have mentioned it if I made her uncomfortable. My boyfriend thinks I'm not in the wrong, but maybe I shouldn't have texted her while they were still having sex. Am I the asshole? Edit. I've noticed a lot of people are surprised about leaving the door open during sex, and I agree it's unusual. But to be fair, she explained that she keeps it open because of her cat. If she closes it, the cat can't walk around freely or access the litter box, which is why she left it open. Am I the asshole for getting upset with my boyfriend when he ate the last of my food while I was in the bathroom? My boyfriend, who is 24 years old, and I, also 24, went to a restaurant together for only our second time eating out. This week has been really rough at work, so I asked him to go out for a meal, telling him I needed a pick-me-up. I mentioned that I wasn't super hungry since I had already eaten a bit earlier, but I was really looking forward to having some dumplings and soup. I even talked about how excited I was for the dumplings during the drive to the restaurant. When we ordered, I made it clear that I only wanted 4 dumplings and some soup. My boyfriend ordered 2 large main courses for himself, as he has a bigger appetite. When the food arrived, I shared my soup with him and took a bite of his food, but I was mostly focused on my dumplings. When my dumplings arrived, I ate one before I had to run to the bathroom. When I got back, I saw that he had eaten both of the remaining dumplings. I was really upset because I had been looking forward to those dumplings and only got to eat one. I told him how disappointed I was and called him selfish, saying he never thinks of me. I even asked him to pay for what he ate since I had specifically ordered those dumplings for myself. I don't want to make this a huge deal, but I feel like he should have asked before just taking them, especially since I had clearly expressed how excited I was for them. Am I the asshole for getting upset, calling him selfish, and asking him to pay more? Am I the asshole for not waking up my roommate on the day of his final med school exam? I am a 23-year-old man and my roommate Justin, also 23, and I are med students. We've been roommates for 2 years, living together in a hostel. Last week was our final year exams and it was brutal. We were surviving on just 2 to 3 hours of sleep each day, running on coffee and energy drinks. I know it's not healthy, but there was no other way to get through it, honestly. On the last day of exams, Justin was especially exhausted. Around 1 a.m., he decided to get some sleep and asked me to wake him up at 3 a.m. I agreed. However, by 2:30 a.m. I was completely drained. My brain was shutting down, my notes were becoming blurry, and I knew that if I stayed up any longer, I'd probably just pass out. So, I decided to wake Justin up a bit early. I woke Justin up at 2:30 a.m., told him the time, and suggested he set an alarm so he wouldn't oversleep. He sat up, rubbed his eyes, nodded, and said, "All right." I reminded him, "Don't forget to set an alarm," and then almost instantly I fell asleep. We both ended up waking up at 8 a.m. I had set my alarm for 6 a.m., but I kept hitting snooze. Justin panicked, accusing me of not waking him up as I had promised. I reminded him that I did wake him up at 2:30 a.m. and suggested he set an alarm. Justin argued that he was too sleepy to fully understand what was happening and insisted that I should have stayed awake to wake him at 3 a.m. or, at the very least, Made sure he was fully alert before going to sleep myself. Justin's exam didn't go well and now he's blaming me. I understand his frustration, but I think he's being unfair. Am I the asshole?
Am I the asshole for worrying about my sister? I, 22F, have a sister, 31F, who's engaged to a guy she's known for less than a year. They briefly broke up after she found out he had a troubled past. He once planned to join a terrorist group when he was a teen, which got him a long sentence. Despite this, she decided to get back with him, though she hasn't told our parents about this part of his history. I'm not so concerned with his past because he seems to have turned his life around, but there are other things that worry me. My biggest concern is that my sister is rushing into this relationship and moving across the country for a guy she's barely spent time with. They've met in person for a total of 10 days, 5 of which were for their engagement, and he doesn't have a stable job. He's bought a ring and a house, promising to pay off the mortgage, but he's struggling financially. Additionally, he didn't do anything for their engagement reception, showed up unprepared, and had to be driven to the mall to buy a suit. What really bothers me is his attitude. He's homophobic, thinks voting is stupid, and even joked about joining a terrorist group again if he wasn't so scared of getting locked up. I've tried talking to my sister, telling her she's rushing into things, and that this guy needs to get his life together before marriage. But she insists we're just trying to stop her from being happy, and that she's an adult and can make her own choices. After I confronted her, she broke down and said I was not letting her make her own decisions. I got my other siblings involved, and now I'm wondering if I went too far. So, am I the asshole for worrying about my sister and trying to intervene in her engagement? Did I overstep by involving my siblings and confronting her about this guy? Am I the asshole for not going to my friend's 30th birthday party? I've known my friend A for 8 years. When we first met, we were both in our early 20s, living a party-centric lifestyle. After a year, I moved 3 hours away from her to a different town. In the beginning, she came to visit me 3 times in the first year, but it still involved a lot of partying, and we didn't connect much beyond that. Over the years, my life has changed a lot. I got a partner, went to university, started working full-time to support myself, as I don't have family besides my sister. And I've become a lot busier and more focused on my personal growth. Whenever I'd visit the town where A lives, I'd message her to catch up. But over time, she either wouldn't respond or would cancel plans last minute. There were times she invited me to her holiday place, but I didn't feel close enough to go anymore. Despite all this, we stayed in touch through messages, but I gradually stopped reaching out when I visited since she never seemed to follow through. Recently, she visited near my town and I arranged to meet up with her. My partner and stepdaughter came along, but once again, she ghosted me and didn't reply to my messages. Now, A is having her 30th birthday party today, and it's 2.5 hours away. Initially, I said I could go, but my schedule is really packed. I'm in the final weeks of my first year as a school teacher. I just graduated from university a month ago, and I'm receiving weekly treatment for PTSD, which is exhausting. I told her I couldn't attend the party but would love to take her out to lunch in a couple of weeks when I'm in her town. Her response was that she knew I wouldn't come, and then she accused me of always doing this. She said, "Why couldn't I drive 2 hours?" And then told me our friendship was done before unfriending me on everything. Here's the thing. I understand that she's upset, but her past behavior has made it hard to maintain a connection. She's often flaked on me or ghosted me when I tried to make plans. I've tried to keep the friendship going, but her unreliability has made it difficult to feel comfortable continuing to invest in it. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for not going to her 30th birthday party? I was hoping to make it up to her later, but it seems like that's no longer an option. Should I have pushed myself to go despite everything? Am I the asshole for distancing myself from my in-laws and temporarily not allowing them to see my baby after their behavior? I'm reaching out because I'm feeling a lot of anger and frustration after several months of tension with my in-laws, and I'm wondering if I'm being unreasonable. It's been a constant pattern of them making comments that imply I don't know what I'm doing as a parent or that I'm a horrible one. I've been letting it slide for months, but today was the breaking point. To give you some context, my baby just turned 1, yay, and we threw her a big birthday party. Not on the actual day, but a few days later. We rented a venue, decorated it, bought food, and invited around 22 people. My in-laws couldn't come because they got sick. At first, they weren't sure what it was, but then my mother-in-law told us it was COVID. We told them that they could still come, but they would need to stay outside since I had people with compromised immune systems, including my grandma who's recovering from skin cancer surgery and a friend who had a 1-month-old baby. Plus, we had 9 others there who were around babies regularly, so it felt safer to limit contact. Well, my brother-in-law still tried to just stroll right inside, heading straight towards my friend and her newborn. I yelled at him from across the room. I admit, it was harsh, to let him know he couldn't get the baby sick. Afterward, I texted him to apologize, explaining the stress and my concerns for my family. I thought it was a misunderstanding. His mom hadn't communicated our request clearly. The next day, we went to visit the in-laws as planned, but things quickly escalated. The comments started piling up. Mother-in-law made remarks about me needing to change my baby even though the diaper was fine. Then, my mother-in-law commented on how scrawny my baby looked and suggested I should feed her more. She's actually perfectly average weight. She just has a long torso like her dad. But that comment stung because it was like a direct criticism of how I'm feeding my child. Then, at Thanksgiving dinner, the final straw came when my father-in-law pulled me aside and told me I needed to prioritize family over friends. Now, I had already told them that to allow them to come to the party, I would have had to uninvite 11 family members, and only 4 of them were in-laws. The idea that my friends shouldn't be prioritized over family, when I was already visiting them the next day, felt completely unjust. It was frustrating, and I told my fiancé that I wasn't going to visit them anymore if this continued. The bigger issue for me is that they act like they have a right to see my baby above everyone else. I told my fiancé I will not be going back to their house anymore, and as long as they continue to act like this, I'll be temporarily keeping my baby away. I don't want her to grow up in an environment where she hears constant inappropriate jokes about sensitive topics like rape, mental health, and disabilities. These kinds of jokes have been made to me, and they've joked about my own postpartum depression, which I find incredibly hurtful. I've known my in-laws for about 4 years, but my best friend, who they constantly try to put down, has been in my life since I was in 4th grade, and I've known her longer than I've known my fiancé. She's the only person left who I feel close to, and I'm not going to let my baby grow up hearing these hurtful comments or seeing the blatant disregard for boundaries. To make things even more complicated, my fiancé has tried to stand up for us and set boundaries with his family too, but they only follow them for a short time before slipping back into old habits. It's honestly exhausting. So, am I the asshole for distancing myself from my in-laws and temporarily not allowing them to see my baby? I feel like I'm doing what's best for my child and for my mental health, but I also worry that I might be overreacting out of anger. Edit to clarify. The in-laws were outside for the party, but they saw my baby start walking towards the bathroom and picked her up even though my fiancé and I had clearly said no. That really upset me because they had no respect for our boundaries, and this is a pattern that keeps repeating. Thank you to anyone who can offer perspective. Am I the asshole for keeping my friend on a FaceTime call while my other friend was having a mental breakdown? I, 23F, was on a FaceTime call with my friend Star, 23F, and we decided to play FaceTime roulette, adding other friends to join us. I invited another friend, Cass, who Star doesn't know well. Cass joined the call pretty drunk and immediately started venting about some family issues and her mental state. She acknowledged Star by saying, "Star must think I'm crazy," but then kept going with her rant. Star and I both tried to comfort Cass, but then we shifted to a more lighthearted topic, talking about guys, which everyone seemed to enjoy. After a while, Cass started going off about a guy she's talking to, and when Star asked to see him, Cass decided to call him and left the group FaceTime. Star and I kept talking while Cass was gone. Cass came back after a few minutes, explained that she'd had a big argument with him, and left again to call him. This cycle of her joining and leaving to argue continued for another 30 minutes. Eventually, Cass added the guy to the group call, which made the situation really uncomfortable for Star and me, so we decided to leave the call. I called Star and Cass back, but only Star picked up. Later, Cass called me individually, and I added her back to the group call with Star. At one point, Cass asked me to join a call with the guy, so I could hear him yelling at her. But that wasn't something I had asked for or was comfortable with. After this, the guy ended up texting both Star and me individually, claiming that Cass had keyed his car. He also asked for us to look at photos of the car's damages, which seemed pretty intense. I told him that they should stop talking and asked to see the photo of the damage. Meanwhile, Cass kept cycling in and out of the group call to argue with him privately. At one point, Cass stopped rejoining the call, so Star and I resumed chatting about other things. I sent Star a video of the car's damage, saying it didn't look bad enough for him to be threatening violence toward her. When Cass eventually called me again, I added her back to the group call while Star was sharing her screen showing the video of the car damage. Cass immediately insisted on talking to me privately, so I called her back on my own. That's when she got upset, saying she was spiraling and didn't appreciate me keeping Star in the call. She said that it had been bothering her, but she hadn't mentioned it before. I apologized and explained that I thought she was okay with Star being there since she had interacted with her earlier. Cass hung up, and I texted her an apology, offering to talk things out. But shortly after, I realized she had blocked me. So, I'm wondering, am I the asshole here? I didn't think Cass had an issue with the group dynamic, since she was fine with it earlier and hadn't expressed any discomfort. Was it wrong for me to keep Star on the call when Cass didn't explicitly ask for privacy until much later? Boyfriend, 31M, seems unsure about relationship after I, 28F, told him I was hurt. I'm 9 months pregnant. I'm really shaken up right now, and I don't know what to think about where my relationship is heading. I'll try to keep it brief, but I need some perspective. The other night, my boyfriend and I were going through old photos of me, and when we came across one, he said, "What happened?" I immediately interpreted this as, "Wow, you used to look good. What happened?" Because it felt like a dig at my appearance, which hit me hard. I'm 38 weeks pregnant, and honestly, I've been feeling really self-conscious about my body lately. His comment just felt cruel and thoughtless. I couldn't shake how hurt I was, and I carried that feeling with me throughout the day. When I came home from work the next day, I finally told him that I was upset. He apologized right away, but when I asked him why he thought I was upset, he seemed confused, almost as if he didn't understand what he had done wrong. I don't think he really grasped it. As we settled into bed that night, we started talking about it, and although the conversation was tense, it wasn't toxic. There were no raised voices, no insults, just the kind of emotional conversation you might expect from a couple when one person is hurt. Eventually, he said that he didn't mean it that way and he apologized again. I was ready to move on and asked him how he felt about the conversation. That's when he completely blindsided me. He told me that after our talk, he felt worse, that he was now afraid of me, and that he saw a totally different side of me. He said he didn't understand how I could be so upset over something so small for an entire day, and that he didn't know how to look at me moving forward. I was stunned. I never expected him to react that way. I thought the apology would have been enough, and I assumed we'd be able to resolve it. When I tried to push for some resolution, he told me there was nothing to resolve and that the damage has been done. This is what's been keeping me up at night. What does that even mean? What damage is he talking about? I'm 38 weeks pregnant, and we've been in a stable, loving relationship for years. We have a child on the way. And now, all of a sudden, he says he doesn't know how to look at me anymore? I'm confused and hurt by how his reaction seems to suggest that he doesn't see a future with me. I never imagined we'd be in a situation like this, especially not over something like this. It wasn't even an argument. I was just upset for a day over a comment that felt deeply hurtful to me. I don't know where we go from here, and I'm honestly preparing for the worst. I've been reflecting on everything, and I'm struggling to understand if I overreacted, but it just feels like he's making something so small into something much bigger than it ever was. I can't help but feel like his fear of me is a red flag, and now I'm worried about how this will affect our family and the future we were building together. Before anyone asks, we've had a really solid relationship, at least I thought we did. We have the same values, we enjoy each other's company, and we're very affectionate. In the entire time we've been together, we've had only 3 arguments, with this being the 3rd. I truly didn't think this would lead to something like this. I, 24M, lied about my savings to my girlfriend, 27F, and I don't know how to move on from this. Good morning, everyone. I'm in a bit of a dilemma, and I'm hoping for some advice on how to move forward from a situation I created by lying to my girlfriend. Let me start by saying that things are going really well with my girlfriend. She's amazing, understanding, supportive, and incredibly caring. I truly love her, and I want to be the best partner I can. But there's this issue I've been carrying around, and I feel like I'm deceiving her in a way that's eating me up inside. When we first started dating, I was in a really rough financial situation. I graduated college a year and a half ago, and while work has been going great since I got my first full-time job in May, the few years before that were a mess. I was in a 2-year-long abusive relationship that drained me emotionally, physically, and financially. My ex was extremely manipulative. She financially abused me, controlled my income, and forced me to pay for everything while she lived comfortably on a trust fund. I was working just to cover my own rent, her lifestyle, and a whole list of other expenses she imposed on me. She even had a friend living rent-free in my room while I was paying rent. As a result, I had to dip into savings I had built up in college, sell off assets like my car and stocks, and basically deplete everything I had just to survive. It wasn't just the financial toll. It was the emotional and mental strain too. My savings, everything I had worked for, were gone. It wasn't until I left that I started to get back on my feet, and I'm still recovering. Now, fast forward to today. I'm with my current girlfriend, who's truly an amazing person. She's worked hard for everything she has and has been able to save up a lot, and I am incredibly proud of her. The problem, though, is that I haven't been fully transparent with her about my savings. When she asks about it, I tell her that I have decent savings, and she keeps saying how proud she is of me for saving and investing. The truth is, I barely have anything saved. After leaving my ex, I had to recover from the financial wreckage. I've only just started putting money back in my IRA and my high-yield savings account. Right now, I have about $5,000 to my name, nothing compared to what she's saved. I lied because I didn't want her to think less of me. I didn't want to disappoint her, especially since she's been so proud of me. But now, I feel guilty because I know I haven't been fully honest with her. I don't want to keep this lie going, but I'm scared of how she'll react if I tell her the truth. I've been trying to recover, but I'm still playing catch-up, and it feels like I'm hiding something that's important for her to know. The thing is, I don't want her to feel bad or feel like she has to help me or anything like that. She has her life together, and I want to be able to stand on my own 2 feet. But the guilt of not being 100% honest is eating at me, and I'm not sure how to approach this without causing issues.
Actualización 1. Algunos me sugirieron que hablara con mis sobrinos, así que lo hice. Ellos me informaron que ya habían oído hablar de la situación por algunos familiares y habían considerado hablar conmigo, pero no habían tenido tiempo. Después de que los llamé y hablé con ellos, me dijeron que pensaban que hice lo correcto. Mi sobrino fue muy claro en su opinión, diciendo que nunca consideró a su madre como una figura maternal en su vida. Siempre me culpó a mí porque ella nunca estuvo allí para él, y mi sobrina estuvo de acuerdo. Él siempre ha sido el más expresivo del grupo, por lo que era predecible que todo esto viniera de él. Mis sobrinas estaban demasiado emocionales para hablar, pero él estaba muy enojado y molesto. Explicó que Diana solo me hablaba porque nunca hizo lo mínimo por ellos, a pesar de que recibía la manutención infantil de su padre, y aún así los humillaba y les hacía sentir mal solo por existir, lo cual no era culpa de ellos. Ellos creen que hice lo correcto y me han dicho que no van a contactar a su madre, pase lo que pase. También creen que debo defenderme y explicar mi versión de los hechos en las redes sociales, ahora que Diana ha decidido hablar negativamente de mí allí. Piensan que esta es la forma más efectiva de transmitir el mensaje, y por eso lo haré. Estoy encantada de que hayan decidido tomar mi lado en esto, porque mis padres se están manteniendo al margen y han dicho que no quieren involucrarse. Diana nunca les habló después de que sus hijos la rechazaran, lo que me parece raro. La postura educada de mis padres me resulta extraña, dado que no han tenido contacto con Diana en los últimos 6 años. Me decepcionó, pero al menos mis sobrinos me apoyan ahora. Mucha gente me ha preguntado por qué no pedí la custodia y quité a los niños de Diana si sabía que era una mala madre y los estaba maltratando. Mencioné en mi publicación que, aunque sus acciones eran incorrectas, no constituían tortura, abuso o negligencia. Siempre fue dura con ellos y no estaba emocionalmente presente, así que aunque podría haber solicitado la custodia, era muy improbable que los tribunales me dieran la custodia total. Los tribunales generalmente fomentan que las familias permanezcan unidas, y en este caso, ya. Habían perdido a su padre, quien los había abandonado, dejando solo a su madre como progenitora biológica. Naturalmente, el tribunal habría querido que la familia permaneciera junta. Sabía que si presentaba una petición contra ella o tomaba medidas legales, Diana haría todo lo posible para que nunca los volviera a ver. Se aseguraría de que los niños se alejaran de mí. Ya era improbable que pudiera obtener la custodia total, así que eso los pondría en una situación peligrosa. Por eso decidí tomar el camino seguro, mantenerme en contacto con ellos y estar disponible en todo momento. No estoy segura de si fue lo correcto a largo plazo, pero en ese momento me pareció que era la única opción. Tal vez había otras formas de manejarlo, pero fue lo único que se me ocurrió, así que hice lo que creí que era lo correcto. Fue difícil para mí, y durante años debatí si debía solicitar la custodia o quitarles a los niños y reubicarlos, pero no se sabe qué podría haber pasado, así que pensé que era mejor que los niños permanecieran con su madre y mantuvieran el contacto conmigo y mis padres, en lugar de arriesgarse a algo en esa situación. Espero que esto aclare las preguntas que la mayoría de la gente tenía para mí. Tal vez me presenté como la villana por lo que hice, pero no me importa. Sé que los niños están bien en sus vidas y que hice todo lo que pude para mantenerlos felices y a salvo. Siempre estuve ahí para ellos, así que no me siento culpable por nada. Actualización 2. Han pasado una semana desde el mensaje de Diana, y hoy he recibido muchas llamadas telefónicas de familiares y personas que han hablado con ella. Me estaban señalando mis errores y regañándome. Ya estaba realmente cansada, y además tenía mucho trabajo, por lo que no pude publicar antes. Pero hoy decidí que ya era suficiente. Después de una breve conversación con mis sobrinos, finalmente decidí hacer una publicación compartiendo mi versión de los hechos, y de alguna manera, también la de ellos. No creo que nadie en la familia se diera cuenta de todo lo que esos niños pasaron durante su infancia, cuántos insultos tuvieron que soportar cada día solo porque Diana decidió quedarse embarazada siendo joven y dejarlo todo por su novio de ese entonces. Incluso después de todo eso, ella siguió culpando a los demás por sus propios errores y trató de hacer ver que estaba haciendo todo lo posible por lo mejor para sus hijos, cuando en realidad nunca estuvo presente para ellos. Ella decía que yo les había robado a sus hijos y ahora les estaba robando una fortuna, ahora que ellos estaban económicamente bien. Sentí que la gente merecía saber la verdad, no. Solo su versión retorcida de los hechos, en la que ella se presentaba como la víctima, cuando en realidad fue ella quien atormentó a todos. Ya me habían juzgado por varias razones, solo porque conocían su versión, y simpatizaban con ella, pero en realidad, yo merecía compartir mi parte de la historia, al igual que sus hijos. Así que escribí todo hace unas horas y publiqué la publicación. Hasta ahora no ha dicho nada, y los únicos mensajes que he recibido son de algunos familiares que antes me estaban juzgando. Ahora, de manera abrupta, están intentando disculparse por haberme juzgado tan rápido, pero sinceramente, no me importa. Simplemente quería que supieran la verdad. No me importa lo que piensen de mí, pero era fundamental hablar con la verdad y contar cómo Diana trató a sus hijos, por eso ya no tienen contacto con ella. Ahora que todo está dicho y hecho, estoy lista para seguir adelante con esto. Honestamente, no quiero saber nada de Diana, y estuve perfectamente contenta durante los últimos 6 años cuando ella no me contactó. Creo que los hijos de Diana también pueden decir lo mismo. No entiendo por qué sintió la necesidad de crear tanto drama. Si quería dinero, podría haberlo pedido, en lugar de pretender que quería una segunda oportunidad de ser madre.
Update 3. As you all wanted, here's another update on my situation. Finally, I had my baby shower and it was epic. My cousins and close family friends came together to give me the most wonderful experience, thanks to my dad and Matt. The decorations were perfect, the food delicious, and the atmosphere was full of joy and excitement. It was a day full of love and positivity, and I couldn't be more grateful to everyone who made it possible. As for my mom and Claire, they're not doing well. My dad reached his limit with Claire's behavior when she recently came home drunk after a date with her boss. Just to clarify, the guy she's having an affair with is married with kids, so it's obviously very wrong. When my dad saw how she was, he'd had enough and asked her to leave the house. He felt it was time for her to take responsibility and start living independently. Claire had always lived at home, even during college and after graduation. She moved straight in with her ex-husband, Cameron. My dad did the right thing by kicking her out. Mom initially opposed his decision, but eventually gave in when he asked her to go with Claire if she wanted to. I have no idea whether Claire is living in her own apartment now or couch surfing with friends, but I'm glad she's never called me for help. I know many of you were concerned about the impact of my mom's actions on my parents' marriage. Despite everything, I don't think they'll divorce. They've been together for so long, and despite the challenges they've faced, they seem committed to staying together. Though my mom's actions may have strained our relationship, I still value their marriage and hope they can work through their differences. It's disappointing that neither my mom nor Claire has apologized. Although my mom has tried to reach out a couple of times, her messages only focus on how hurt she is, with nothing about how much she hurt me. It seems she still doesn't fully understand the impact of her actions. What really bothers me is that she could have addressed the issues between Claire and me a long time ago when we were younger, but she chose to ignore the warning signs. Now it's too late for us. Our family is broken, and I blame her for that. I'm planning to cut contact permanently with my sister and my mom's side of the family because I don't want my son to be surrounded by negativity or hate. As for Matt and me, we're doing well. He's an amazing partner and takes such good care of me. This may be my last update on this matter, as I want to move forward and focus on enjoying these last few weeks of my pregnancy. Update 5. This update is to let you know that my parents' divorce is final, and my mom had to sell the house. The property was ordered to be divided in two, so my mom had to sell it to pay my dad his share. My dad doesn't have to pay anything to my mom because, although she didn't work and he was the sole provider, the infidelity worked in my dad's favor. What I know is that my mom and sister are now living together with the money from the house sale and Claire's salary, though I'm sure that won't last for long. That's all I know, as the families barely speak to each other anymore after everything that's happened. Am I the asshole for refusing to pay my brother back for things he said I could have? To cut a very, very long story short, I was raised by my grandma and didn't know she was my grandma until I was 11, until social services got involved when I was 13. They felt she couldn't care for me anymore, so I was going to be placed in a foster family. My older brother, who is actually my uncle, had already moved out by then. He gave me a few things before I left, including a PS2, a few games, an old electric guitar, an amp, 2 pairs of jeans, and a hoodie. My foster family already had an Xbox 360, and when I helped an elderly neighbor clear out his attic, I found a PS2 Slim and some more games. He told me I could keep them, so I never really used the PS2 my brother gave me. My first Christmas with my foster family, they bought me a new electric guitar and amp. When I turned 14, my body changed a lot. My boobs went from an A cup to a DD in 1 year, and by 15 I had gained weight, and the hoodie and jeans my brother gave me didn't fit anymore. The stuff he gave me ended up getting stored in the garage, but unfortunately, they were all ruined in a flood. My foster parents showed me what a loving, caring family was, and they eventually adopted me when I was 16. I now consider them my parents and love them dearly. A couple of years ago, I decided to reconnect with my grandma, and we've since developed a normal relationship. She seemed genuinely remorseful for not being involved in my life. I hadn't seen my brother until recently when he showed up while I was visiting her. At first, it was nice catching up, but then he said, "So, can I have my stuff back now?" I asked what he meant, and he listed the items he gave me: the PS2, the games, the clothes, and the guitar. I reminded him that he said I could have those things, so I considered them gifts. He told me, "Look, I only gave them to you because I felt sorry for you. Just give them back." I explained that everything had gotten damaged in the flood, but he got angry and said, "Typical. You know, if you weren't such a screw-up, you wouldn't have been put into care in the first place. You owe me for all that stuff. About £600. I laughed and said, "No way am I paying you that much. If you really want the PS2 that badly, I have a slim version you can have, even though I'd like to keep it." but I'm not paying you a single penny. He called me a fucking bitch and an asshole before storming out. My grandma said, "Don't worry about him. I'll make sure he doesn't come around again. I work as a barista, and with the cost of living crisis, I barely have enough money to buy Christmas presents for everyone this year. £600 is unattainable for me, but I'm wondering, am I the asshole?" He never explicitly said he wanted everything back, but he never said they were gifts either, just that I could have them. Am I the asshole for asking my housemate not to use our living space as her office? Ever since the lockdown, my housemate and I have been working from home at least a couple of days a week. We live in an open-plan apartment with a living room, dining room, and kitchen all in one space. I have a desk in my bedroom, but my housemate doesn't have one in hers. So, whenever she works from home, she turns the dining table into her office, and I retreat to my bedroom to work. There are a few things worth mentioning about her work habits. By her own admission, she's loud, plays music at a high volume, works through lunch, and is a workaholic who regularly works late into the evening. She also types loudly on her keyboard, so much so that I can hear it across the apartment. I'm trying to be more mindful of my mental health, so I've been trying to go to the office more, but I still work from home sometimes. However, when I am at home, I feel like I can't properly use our shared living space. When we're both here on a workday, I feel trapped in my bedroom, unable to take breaks or relax in the living room. In the evening, I can't unwind either because she's still using the space, even if she isn't playing music or taking calls. Just the fact that she's using the living room as a workplace changes the atmosphere for me, and I can't seem to get comfortable. I've spoken to her about it, asking if we could keep the living space work-free after 5 p.m. If she needs to work late, I suggested she should go to the office. I also asked if we could avoid working from home at the same time so that I could actually use the living room when I'm home. After all, I have a desk in my room, so I shouldn't be the one stuck in the bedroom all the time. She thinks I'm being too demanding and insists she has the right to use the living space however she wants, as long as she's not taking calls or playing music. She says I'm overreacting. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for asking my housemate not to use our living space as her office? Am I being too demanding, or is she being entitled? Would I be the asshole for planning to leave the restaurant that I own with my dad? Some background. I, 28M, and my dad, 59M, co-own a pizzeria together. However, my girlfriend of 2 years, Emily, 29F, wants me to quit, and both my mom, 56F, and sister, 32F, agree with her. The issue is that my dad and Emily absolutely hate each other. Emily tells me that my dad has been taking advantage of me, using me as almost free labor. She says that whenever I'm out doing deliveries, he talks poorly about me. I can only take her word for it, as I've never been present during these times. She claims that when I do something wrong, he belittles me, but when I do something right, he completely ignores it and focuses on my mistakes instead. According to my sister, I've been so conditioned to this behavior over the years that I don't even notice it anymore. Emily jokes that if I were to leave, the restaurant would collapse within months. On the other hand, my dad believes that Emily is only with me because I own the restaurant. He says she speaks badly about him to people. In our city, although I've never witnessed that myself unless someone specifically brings him up, I've been working at the pizzeria for 11 years without a salary. When I needed money, I would ask my dad for it, and that was just how it was. This only changed about a year ago when Emily insisted that I start asking to be paid. When I first brought up the subject of getting paid to my dad, he became upset and aggressive. He accused me of being ungrateful, claiming he's building the business for me and reminding me that his own father never left him anything. He also points out that I have a nice car, which he bought me, and a house that I will inherit from him, saying that I'm very lucky and that others think so too. Eventually, he agreed to pay me, but at only €400 a month. Recently, I asked for a raise since I'm looking to further my education to improve my resume. I'm supposed to get €600 per month now, but the minimum wage here is €820, and he says the €220 difference is for rent, which I think is a reasonable explanation. After talking with my mom and sister, I've come to realize that my dad is very controlling when it comes to money. For example, my mom's paycheck is controlled by him. He uses it to pay the pizzeria staff and for any necessary purchases. Whenever my mom needs something, she has to ask my dad for money, and he gets irritated when she does. I also found out that the 1.6 thousand euro I inherited from my grandma was used to pay electricity bills for the pizzeria without my consent. At this point, I don't want to live like my dad, stressed out, unsure if I'll have enough money to pay the staff and working myself into an early grave. So, would I be the asshole for planning to leave the restaurant? Am I the asshole for not taking my cousin to a Christmas show? Last year, I took my 7-year-old niece, Emma, to a Christmas play at a local community theater. Emma had asked to go, and her mother, Lisa, my sister, doesn't really enjoy those kinds of events. So I offered to take Emma as her Christmas present. Lisa agreed, and we picked a date that worked, and I got the tickets. The day of the play came, we saw the show, got some souvenirs, and I took Emma out for dinner afterward. She had an amazing time. Since the show was before Christmas, I didn't bring a gift for Emma when Christmas Day came around. We went to Lisa's for dinner, but I didn't think to bring anything extra for Emma. The play was her Christmas present. After dinner, Lisa pulled me aside and chastised me for not bringing a gift for Emma. I was confused and said, "But the show was Emma's gift." She looked at me with disgust and told me I was incredibly rude and that I didn't understand children. I'm not a parent myself. I felt like Lisa was overreacting, but I didn't want to argue, so I just stepped away, had some dessert, and left. For the record, Emma didn't seem upset at all about not receiving a gift from me. She had plenty of other gifts from Santa, her grandparents, and other relatives. It wasn't even mentioned again. When Emma's birthday came around in the spring, I just brought a toy to the party. I didn't offer to do something special with her because I was still a little annoyed by Lisa's behavior. The toy was just added to the pile with all her other gifts. A couple of weeks ago, Lisa asked if I could take Emma to this year's Christmas show. Honestly, I don't want to do it. I'm still upset by how Lisa acted last year. I think she was rude and condescending, and I don't want to spend another couple of $100s on a gift for a 7-year-old, only to be expected to bring another one on Christmas Day. So, I told Lisa I wasn't available, but I'd be happy to pass along the ticket information so she or her husband could take Emma. She was surprised but said, "Oh, okay." And that was the end of it. Haven't heard anything about it since. I plan to bring Emma a $25 toy on Christmas Day, just to avoid being criticized again. I'm sure it will just end up in the pile of other toys. Honestly, I don't care. Part of me feels guilty because Emma had such a great time last year, but I also feel like I'm being petty. Emma will still get a gift, and if she really wants to go to the play, her parents can take her. Am I the asshole for not taking Emma to the Christmas show this year? Am I the asshole for asking my ex-housemate to show receipts for miscellaneous expenses? I used to live with a housemate, Sandra, who had to leave quite suddenly due to a job falling through and visa issues. I also had to move out shortly after because I couldn't find someone to replace her in the room. Our arrangement was that Sandra would cover the electricity, I would pay for the internet and water, and we'd split the cost of cleaning supplies, including the cleaner we hired bi-weekly, evenly. We kept track of all the expenses on Splitwise. Sandra moved out at the end of September, and now it's December. I've been chasing her since the end of October to settle up, as our lease officially ended and we had a few small things to finalize. Sandra kept saying she needed to update the Splitwise for the cleaning supplies and miscellaneous things she had purchased earlier in the year and had forgotten to add. She even sent me a picture of a bundle of receipts in a Ziploc bag, but the photo was unreadable. After weeks of follow-ups and her promises to do it tomorrow or this week for sure, Sandra finally uploaded a bulk entry to Splitwise, claiming over $250 worth of cleaning and miscellaneous expenses. I was shocked because, as far as I knew, I was the one who usually bought most of the cleaning supplies, per the cleaner's requests. Sandra never went to the store because, frankly, she couldn't cook to save her life. I asked her to clarify what miscellaneous meant, and she accused me of implying she was lying about the expenses. However, she still hasn't provided any specific receipts. To make matters worse, I recently called the electricity company and found out that the $900 electricity bill for 2 months hasn't been paid, despite Sandra marking it as paid on Splitwise. Apparently, she forgot to pay it, and the last recorded payment was in July. I haven't brought this issue up yet because the bill is in her name, but it's definitely making me question everything. At this point, I'm just exhausted from constantly chasing her for payment and trying to get clarity. Honestly, the amount of money involved is relatively small, only a couple of $100s, but I'm starting to get frustrated because it's not just about the money anymore. It's about the principle of the thing, especially given all the lies and excuses. The situation is complicated further by the fact that we're now in different countries and time zones, so it makes it even more difficult to resolve. So, am I the asshole for asking my ex-housemate to show receipts for the miscellaneous expenses? Or should I just let it go, since it's such a small amount in the grand scheme of things? Am I the asshole for ending a lifelong friendship because of lying? I, 28M, have a lifelong friend, 28M, who I've known practically my entire life. Over the years, though, I've started to realize that I can't stand his constant lying anymore. He lies about things that don't matter at all, non-consequential things, that seem to exist only to make him appear better or more important. These aren't just one-off fibs. It's a pattern that's been going on for years. Here are some examples of lies he's told. He owns a pharmacy. He runs a liquor business that sells liquor across the country. He's currently the side guy in an affair with a rich woman. He has millions of dollars in assets. He went undefeated in a fantasy football league and won it last year. His grandpa is dying. His grandma has dementia. One of the lies that really escalated my frustration happened after I opened up to him about the abuse I suffered as a child. His immediate response was to say that he had been abused by a female cousin. Disclaimer 1. I can't prove this is a lie, and I really hate to doubt anyone's trauma, especially when it comes to abuse. Disclaimer 2. Regardless of whether this was true, the timing of it made me regret opening up to him. I felt like, in that moment, my experience wasn't being acknowledged, and instead, he just shifted the focus to himself. He has also promised friends he could get things for them, like concert tickets for a sold-out show, only for the promises to fall through. For instance, he told a friend he could get tickets because of his job, and when the friend followed up and offered to pay whatever, it turned out that something happened and it didn't work out. There's also the fact that whenever we ask him if he wants to hang out and he says he's doing something or in a specific location, we know he's lying. He has his location shared with us on iPhone, but when we check, we often see that he's at home, even though he's told us he's somewhere else. The real issue is that it's become impossible to distinguish between truth and lies. For every lie he tells, just when we think we've caught him, he somehow manages to show evidence that makes it seem like he's not lying. Exhausting and confusing because it's hard to know when to trust him. I've tried to understand his behavior, thinking that maybe his lying is a coping mechanism because he feels lonely or insecure, but I'm honestly just too tired of it now. The lies are getting more frequent, and at this point it feels like a total lack of respect. While none of his lies have directly impacted my relationships with others, except maybe once or twice, it's wearing me down. It's become emotionally draining. Am I the asshole for preventing a shock collar for my dog? I recently moved into a new house with my in-laws, specifically my mother-in-law and father-in-law. The situation took a dramatic turn when we got into a heated argument in the family group chat, mostly because I was away at work at the time. Here's the issue. Since moving in, my mother-in-law has been adamant about putting a shock collar on my dog. Now, to give some context, my dog is not a particularly loud or disruptive animal. He only barks when he sees delivery people, or if someone slams a door, which is really just him responding to sudden sounds. Despite me telling her that my dog doesn't need a shock collar, and that he's not as problematic as they claim, my mother-in-law insisted that he barks at everything while I'm gone. I told them multiple times I didn't want a shock collar used on him, but they dismissed my wishes, saying they were going to put one on him anyway. It got to a point where I couldn't take it anymore, so I finally snapped. I told them that if I came home and found a shock collar on my dog, I would destroy it. As soon as I said this, everything went downhill. The conversation exploded. They called me unhinged and claimed I was overreacting, suggesting that a simple smack on the ass was far less severe than using a shock collar. Now, mind you, this is coming from a woman who, before I married my wife, used to lock my dog in a tiny crate with a beagle in the garage. This wasn't a spacious crate. There was barely enough room for either of them to stretch out fully. And let's not forget, these were the same people who thought that this was acceptable behavior for a dog. The conversation spiraled even further when they accused me of being crazy and began bringing up personal details just to make nasty jabs at me. At that point, I decided to stop responding altogether. The real kicker? I'm now stuck in a 2-year lease with these people, and I have no idea what to do. I can't get out of this lease without facing significant consequences, and I'm living with people who clearly don't respect my boundaries when it comes to my dog. So now I'm stuck in this awkward and toxic living situation. I'm wondering if I overreacted here or if my reaction was justified. Was I wrong to stand my ground against the shock collar? Or am I blowing things out of proportion? My sister steals the spotlight at my wedding to announce her pregnancy, and now she blames me for the fallout. I'm 28 years old and recently got married to my boyfriend of 5 years, Jason, who's also 28. My younger sister, Allison, who's 26, was also at the wedding, and, as usual, she was trying to steal the show. But thankfully, I was 2 steps ahead of her. About a week ago, the baker handling our wedding cake told me that Allison had contacted her. She claimed she wanted another cake for the wedding, a cake to announce her pregnancy. Allison told the baker that I had requested it and gave her the instructions to contact Allison. But the baker didn't buy it. She even offered to pay double what I was paying just to keep it a secret from me. Fortunately, the baker had good ethics and told me about it as soon as she could. As soon as I found out, I realized that Allison was planning to pull a stunt at my wedding to get attention. I could have disinvited her, but instead, I decided to stay ahead of her and not let her ruin my special day. It really upset me that she couldn't tolerate my happiness and was always trying to make everything about herself. I would never do something so foolish for attention. The day of the wedding, everything went smoothly during the ceremony. Then, when it was time to cut the cake with Jason, Allison interrupted, saying she had an announcement. She brought her own cake from the baker and everyone was surprised, except Jason and me, because I had already told him this would happen and we had planned for it. Her cake was a pregnancy announcement with a message that said, "Congratulations on the new baby." People started congratulating her and her husband, and my parents were the worst. They started crying and completely forgot about me. Fortunately, some relatives stuck by my side instead of crowding around her, which, in my opinion, was extremely inappropriate since it was my wedding. After everyone congratulated Allison, she wore a self-satisfied look on her face and suggested we continue with the wedding. At that moment, I decided to bring out my special guest, someone who could really ruin Allison's moment. Honestly, I didn't even care that this was happening at my wedding. It made things more memorable, especially for Allison. After she suggested continuing, I smiled and told her I was really happy for her, which surprised her. Then I pretended to be confused and told her to wait, because there was someone special who needed to be there to complete the celebration. That was the signal for my special guest to enter the room as planned. Everyone was waiting to find out who this person was. It turned out to be Allison's ex-boyfriend, Jared, the one she had been with before her husband, Eric, 28. Allison and Jared had lived together for a while, but they had problems in their relationship because Jared wanted to get married, but Allison wasn't ready. I did the math and concluded there had been some overlap. Allison had been seeing Jared and Eric at the same time for at least 6 months. Even Jared knew, but he didn't say anything. I didn't bring it up either because I didn't think it was worth mentioning. Until now, Allison had been cheating on Eric at the start of their relationship, and nobody knew about it. But once I found out what Allison was doing and how much drama she was creating, I decided it was time to expose the truth. After the baker contacted me, I let Allison go ahead with her plan, and I secretly contacted Jared. I thought it was about time Eric knew what was going on. Jared was shocked when I told him Allison was pregnant and planning to announce it at my wedding. Apparently, she had stayed in touch with him all these years, not expressing love or anything, but she would check in every couple of weeks, asking how he was doing. If you've broken up with someone and gotten married to another person, There's no reason to stay in contact with your ex, especially when you hadn't fully ended things with them until you were sure about your current partner. Jared felt completely betrayed by Allison. He realized she had been leading him on, pretending to care for him while being married to someone else. So when I told her my plan, it took some convincing, but in the end, she agreed to come. When she entered the room on my wedding day, Allison's smile completely vanished. Everyone who knew Jared stopped smiling too, and the atmosphere turned tense and awkward. Jared didn't waste time and went straight to Allison. He congratulated her on the pregnancy and then told Eric that it was very sweet of him to let her stay in touch with Jared, even though they had broken up a long time ago and she had been cheating on both of them. Obviously, Eric had no idea about any of this, so he was shocked and didn't even know what to say. Once that was done, Jared thanked me and Jason for inviting him, then left. After that, there were a few moments of silence, followed by complete chaos. Eric started yelling at Allison for what he'd just discovered, and then they both stormed off. My parents began yelling at me for doing something so dishonest and insane just to get back at my sister for something so trivial and small. But I didn't care, so I told them that if they didn't like what I'd done, they could leave too. They did, along with a few other guests who didn't seem to approve of my actions. The people who stayed were some relatives and most of my friends. Thankfully, not too many people left, and we were able to continue the wedding as planned. My parents were no longer there, and honestly, at that point, I was fine with it. After all that, no one mentioned Allison again. Before they left, people just congratulated me on the wedding and then left. When we got home after that, Jason and I were pretty sure we had done the right thing, and honestly, we still feel that way. However, the day after our wedding, my parents gave me an ultimatum when they came to visit. They showed up in the morning, and I was pretty surprised to see them because the last time we spoke, I told them they were free to leave my wedding, and they did. But then they entered my house and told me that because of me, my sister's marriage was in trouble. Apparently, Eric, like any sensible person, was really angry with Allison for staying in contact with Jared, even though she had been married to him for almost a year. He was also upset because there had been an overlap, which meant she had been cheating on him at the beginning of their relationship, and he hadn't even known. He felt like a fool, and I couldn't blame him for that. Allison had cheated, and all I did was expose her. I don't think I did anything wrong. If anyone had ruined her marriage, it was Allison herself. I didn't understand why my parents were blaming me for it, and I started arguing with them because it seemed so unfair. But they told me they weren't here to argue. They just wanted to tell me that if I didn't apologize to Allison and Eric and tell them that everything Jared said was something I suggested as a joke, they would never speak to me again. It seemed like a really stupid idea to me because even if I said it was all a joke, I didn't think Eric was that dumb. I'm pretty sure he would figure out we were trying to cover up what had happened. And more importantly, I really didn't want to do any of that. This wasn't a joke gone wrong. This was the truth, and I thought it was important for it to come out eventually. I told my parents I wouldn't apologize for anything, and if they didn't like it, they could go for a walk. Then they started yelling at me, calling me selfish and mean because what Allison did was nothing compared to what I had done. They said I had completely crossed the line and lost my mind because it reflected badly not just on Allison, but on the whole family, and it seemed like I didn't even care. Eventually, they left and we blocked each other, including my mom. But I haven't stopped thinking about what they said. Maybe I did go too far, but it was Allison who started it, and her initial intention was to make my wedding day about her. I just gave her exactly what she wanted. So I still don't understand how I'm the villain here. Anyway, am I the bad one for ruining my sister's marriage? Update 1. First of all, I want to thank everyone for all the responses. It means a lot to me and my husband that so many people are on our side. I'll also answer some questions that people had for us. A lot of people wanted to know how I had so many mutual friends with Jared. Basically, Jared and Jason went to the same high school, but since he was a year younger, they weren't close friends. Turns out he was on the football team, and many of Jason's friends were on that team. So that's how I knew Jared. I'm friends with many of Jason's friends who were also friends with Jared, so that's how I found out about their relationship and the overlap and all that. However, Jared and I were never especially close, and this is the only time we really spoke much while we were planning this whole thing. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer as to why Jared hadn't cut Allison out of his life after their breakup, even after he realized she had been cheating on him with Eric. We weren't close enough for those kinds of discussions, and I think it's a very personal matter. I know he's still in love with her, and I feel bad for him, but I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not going to get involved unless it's necessary. I had a plan, he agreed to it, and that was all we needed to talk about. Beyond that, I don't know anything about his feelings for Allison or why he did what he did. As for Allison, of course, I don't know what was going through her head when she was trying to stay in contact with Jared even after breaking up with him and being in a committed relationship with Eric. So, unfortunately, I don't have answers to that either. Anyway, it's been a week since my wedding, and now I've completely moved on from all of this. I really don't care if Eric and Allison divorce or decide to stay together. I just don't care. My parents care a lot, and I understand that. We've blocked each other now, so we won't talk anymore. I felt a little bad about that, but I should have known this was going to happen eventually because I always knew that my sister is practically the golden child to them. It's sad, but it is what it is. I can't avoid it. During my childhood, I tried hard to earn my parents' approval, but my sister was the youngest, so she was always special to them. I'm not gonna lie, I used to be really jealous of her, but as we grew older, the jealousy turned into resentment, and I just started avoiding her. The only reason she was even invited to my wedding was because my parents insisted, and because she had invited me to hers. As for what I said about her seeking attention, that part is true. She really can't stand it when all the attention is on me, and she always wants to make everything about her. That's part of why I started avoiding her in the first place, and now, obviously, we'll be keeping our distance from each other. I haven't heard from anyone else in the family, apart from the people I know are on my side. Everyone else has blocked me or doesn't want anything to do with me, and I'm fine with that. If taking a stand for myself bothers them that much, then they probably shouldn't be in my life either. I haven't stayed in touch with Jared. I just thanked him via text after everything was done on my wedding day, and he replied saying he was happy to have gotten the closure he needed. So I don't know if she's reached out to him again, but if she does, I'm pretty sure he'll tell me. For now, everything is oddly quiet, but it's good for Jason and me. We're enjoying our newlywed life, and in a few days we'll be heading on our honeymoon. I just hope and pray that any drama my parents or Allison want to cause, they do it before our honeymoon, because once we leave, I'm not entertaining any of this nonsense anymore. In fact, even if they try to reach out to me before then, I know exactly what to do. I'll put them in their place and end this once and for all. They've shown me exactly where I stand with them, so it's time I do the same. Update 2. I was right about Jared. He got in touch with me as soon as Allison sent him a text. It was yesterday, just after I posted the last update here. A few hours after that, Jared messaged me, saying Allison had called him and asked to meet up. Apparently, she wanted to talk in person, so he went to meet her at a cafe. But he got the surprise of his life when he realized that both Allison and Eric were there. It was kind of a setup. As soon as he got there, he was about to leave, but Eric stopped him and started yelling at him. He told Jared to stay away from Allison, as if it was Jared's fault. Jared pointed out that he had no problem staying away from Allison. In fact, that's exactly what he had wanted after their breakup, because he needed time to heal and move on. But it was Allison who kept trying to re-enter his life and kept in contact with him. So if Eric wanted someone to yell at, he should probably yell at Allison instead of blaming Jared. Eric refused to believe any of it, insisting that Allison had told him that Jared was the one who kept reaching out to her, and that she was only responding to be polite. But Jared was ready with evidence. He pulled out his phone and showed Eric the screenshots of his conversations with Allison, which clearly showed that it was Allison who kept contacting him after their breakup. After that, Eric had nothing else to say, so Jared took his chance and left. I'm pretty sure that after this, there's no way the two of them will stay together. When Jared told me all this, he explained that he had gone to meet Allison one last time because he really loved her, but after everything she had done, he would never speak to her again. And I think that's good for him. He needs to move on because Allison just isn't worth it. I also think Eric should leave her because she is definitely confused. I can't imagine doing that to not one, but two guys, one of whom is about to have a baby with you. It's just disgusting. And I'm sure my parents will find a way to justify this too and try to blame me for everything. They haven't reached out yet, but after what just happened, I'm pretty sure they will. And I'm really just waiting for that because I've got a lot to say to them too. Update 3 days after my last update, my family finally came to visit me. As I mentioned before, my parents had blocked me just like Allison, but instead of unblocking me and contacting me through messages or calls, they decided to come bother me in person. I still invited them over so we could talk and put an end to this weird relationship we've had. My parents started by saying that they had treated us both equally throughout our lives, but I had always been envious of my sister for no real reason. I mean, they got it completely wrong. They never treated us equally, but I didn't get angry. I just let them talk because I wanted to see where they were going with this. Then they told me that on my wedding day, my sister just wanted to share in my happiness, which is why she had planned to announce her pregnancy that same day. They said she truly thought I would be happy for her. But it was clear that I had known about her plan from the beginning and didn't agree with it, which is why I set up that little situation with Jared. It was obvious that I wanted to embarrass and humiliate Allison, and my parents couldn't understand why. Of course, they didn't think Allison had done anything wrong. They even told me that if I didn't agree with what Allison was planning to do, I should have talked to her after I found out about her pregnancy announcement plans when she spoke to the baker, confronted her about it, and avoided the situation instead of trying to get back at her for something so trivial. Finally, they told me that because of what I had done, inviting Jared to the wedding and causing a confrontation between the two, Eric was now asking for a divorce. Apparently, Allison had really tried to fight for her marriage, but Eric had made a decision, and it couldn't have come at a worse time since she's pregnant and has no idea what to do now. So they came to me and demanded that not only should I apologize to Allison, but I should also cover all the divorce costs and her medical expenses over the next few months, and even after that if needed. Naturally, the whole idea was so absurd that I laughed. Couldn't believe my parents actually thought I would do it. They seemed shocked that I was laughing, and Allison said she was serious. She said she had the money to cover all of it herself, but because of what I had done, this should be a fitting punishment for me since I was responsible for ruining a happy marriage. I stopped laughing and told her I hadn't ruined anyone's perfect marriage. If she had really had a clean slate, she wouldn't have been in contact with her ex from time to time, even if it was just to see how he was doing. She wouldn't have cared, and she wouldn't have had any connection to him. So if she really wanted to blame someone, she should probably look in the mirror instead of trying to blame me. Then I told her that I wasn't paying for anything at all because if we were really talking about ruined things, she had ruined my wedding, or at least she had tried to. If I hadn't found out earlier, I would have been completely blindsided, and the whole wedding would have been about her pregnancy. She was just angry because I had outdone her and exposed all her lies to her husband. My parents tried to defend her, but I told them that throughout my life, they only thought they treated us equally. Everyone who knew us, however, knew the truth. They had always been biased towards Allison. Even now, they were encouraging her to be selfish and spoiled, even though she had literally ruined her own marriage by being dishonest. My parents were partly responsible for her downfall because if they hadn't spoiled her since she was a child, maybe she would have turned out to be a better person. My parents started arguing with me after that, but I told them I wasn't interested in continuing the discussion. We had already spent enough time on it, and now that they had said what they needed to, and I had said what I wanted, there was nothing more to discuss. They kept trying to talk to me, but I just wasn't interested. So, I told Jason to handle them and went back to my room to rest. Talking with my family was exhausting. Jason stayed out of the argument because he's a bit explosive, and I was pretty sure that my family, with their audacity, would have upset him long before. He would have gotten angry, so it was better for him to stay away for his own good. I didn't want him to get too stressed over something like this. After a while, Jason managed to get them to leave by threatening to call the police. Then it was just the two of us. I'm glad we resolved this before the honeymoon, because now we can enjoy it completely without constantly worrying about what my parents and Allison are doing. Update 4. Jason and I left for our honeymoon 3 days ago, and we're really happy right now. After my parents and Allison left that day, they didn't hesitate to try and make me feel guilty, especially Allison. They had many relatives who were on their side, texting me to say that what I was doing was really disastrous and that I had no right to ruin someone's life like that, especially when they were about to have a baby. Honestly, I don't understand why everyone is blaming me because, as I see it, I'm just the messenger. So, I talked to Jared about it, and we both decided that it was time for everyone to know the truth. He simply posted screenshots of his chats with Allison, and that was all it took. It clearly showed that she was the one who wanted to stay in contact with him. After that post, people started getting even angrier with me, especially Allison and my parents. They claimed I was doing everything I could to ruin their reputation and said this was a clear case of defamation. They even threatened to sue us for defamation. But I don't think it will work because this is the truth, and we're not spreading lies about them. More importantly, even if they file a defamation lawsuit against me, I'll just countersue them for harassment. It's tit for tat. Anyway, I think Allison should be more concerned with the upcoming divorce proceedings and custody battle. If I were her, I wouldn't waste my time trying to fight with others. Fortunately, the family members who have supported me from the beginning have told me they won't stay in touch with my parents or Allison anymore, because it's obvious they are the problem here. They've been terrible to me all along, and I'm glad that people are finally seeing what kind of people they truly are. At first, I felt a little bad because the family split because of what I did, but now I think it was necessary. Anyway, right now Jason and I are focused on enjoying our honeymoon because this time will never come again, and unlike my parents and Allison, we don't plan on letting them ruin our lives. So we're going to make the most of the time we have here. Update 5. Before I start with this update, which has a lot of information, I need to answer a few questions. First, regarding Allison's baby. It might not be Eric's. Well, if I'm honest, I don't know. I don't have proof that the infidelity continued up until now, and Jared hasn't told me that he suspects it's with another man. I don't know, maybe it is. It's not like she's been faithful her whole life, so the chances of it being with another man are high, if you ask me. But I can't exactly go up to Allison and say, "Dear sister, that baby you're carrying is the result of an affair." People have been asking me a lot why I didn't tell Eric earlier. Well, it's not that we had a relationship or even a friendship. If we had been friends, I would have definitely told him. We barely had any relationship with my sister, and with my brother-in-law, I hardly had any contact. I don't have an excuse for that, though. I should have told him, and I just let it slip. As for the update, a lot has happened since the last one. To begin with, we went on our honeymoon, and there was no issue during that time. The drama started only when we returned to our normal lives. First, my mom and her post on Facebook. I still regret helping her set up an account and showing her how to post. In that post, she talked about how hard it was to be a mother, how she gave love to her 2 daughters, and yet some are ungrateful, implying that some have hearts of stone instead of love. It's funny because I might be mistaken, but she treated us differently all our lives. And I'm not talking about small things, but about big differences like how we celebrated birthdays or holidays. If you've made it this far in my story, you can probably imagine what my parties were like compared to Allison's. The worst part is that there was always an excuse to celebrate my birthdays more modestly, like the heater broke that week or the grandmother needed money, but when it came to Allison, there was always money and her parties were full of guests. At that time, I guess they could celebrate without hesitation. I suppose they tried to cover up their favoritism, but I don't know whether to laugh or cry at it. Anyway, my mom made that post with an air of superiority, saying things like, "Few mothers are like me," and despite portraying herself as the best mother ever, some relatives commented on her post and called her out for lying. It took her longer to come up with that story than to achieve anything with it. The funny part came from my sister, who contacted one of her friends to pretend to be some sort of lover of mine. This guy contacted my husband on social media and told him I had been having an affair when we started dating. Wow, it was quite a master plan from my sister. It's clear my husband didn't believe any of it because when he asked for proof, the guy didn't respond. He thought he could do the same to me, but at least he could have tried harder. Maybe this guy is the one sleeping with her, or even the father of the baby, which would explain why he was part of such a circus. This makes me wonder, if she loves getting all the attention, why isn't she enjoying it now? All our relatives and friends are just talking about her divorce and infidelity. The best thing she could do is enjoy it. I don't understand why she'd want to take the focus off her and put it on me. But Well, leaving the sarcasm aside, I think that wraps up the update and answers some of the questions. Am I the asshole for telling my fiancé's lifelong family friend she's not invited to our wedding? So, here's the situation. I, 24F, am engaged to my fiancé, 25M, and we've been planning our wedding for 2025 because I'm still finishing school. My fiancé's family has a lifelong friendship with another family that has spanned generations. The families used to be very close, especially the grandparents, who even moved countries together. Over time, though, our generation hasn't kept in touch as much, though we still see each other during the holidays. I know this girl, 25F, and her family quite well, but we're not super close. About a year ago, my fiancé and I got engaged. A few months after, this family friend, let's call her Sarah, also got engaged and planned her wedding for the end of last year. She sent out save the dates to everyone, including my fiancé, but when the official invitations came out, there was one RSVP that was short, like there were 7 slots but no names on the RSVP form. My fiancé's mom said it was fine for me to attend, as the grandparents couldn't travel, and they had an extra RSVP. We RSVP'd, booked hotels, accommodation, and everything. But a week before the wedding, Sarah called my fiancé. Here's the conversation, almost word for word. Sarah: hey, fiancé's name. I can't wait to see you at the wedding. Who all from your family is coming? Fiancé lists off who is coming and says I'm last. Sarah: oh, I'm sorry, but we aren't inviting my name. Fiancé: why? We're engaged. Sarah: well, I dated her brother, and I think seeing her would just bring up too many painful memories on my wedding day. Fiancé: we're engaged. If she's not invited, then I'm not coming either. Sarah: I want you there, but she cannot come. She's not invited. My fiancé hung up the phone without saying goodbye. We were both stunned and honestly furious. I immediately called my brother to ask about the situation. It turns out Sarah and my brother dated for like a week in middle school before she changed schools in high school. It was such a non-issue that I couldn't believe it. Over 10 years ago, a 1-week middle school relationship was the reason she didn't want me at her wedding? My dad tried to calm me down, telling me it was her day and she could invite whoever she wanted. But I still thought it was ridiculous. Ruining a generations-long family friendship over something so trivial seemed insane to me. The next day, we visited my fiancé's parents to talk about it. But Sarah had already called them, claiming that I wasn't invited because, unless someone is married, there isn't room for plus ones. If she'd said that from the start, I probably would have understood. But she didn't. When we told my fiancé's parents the real reason, they were furious. They confronted Sarah, and she played the victim, saying we were making it all up and villainizing her. I had some choice words for her and essentially told her to fuck off. The wedding came and went, and none of my fiancé's family attended. They weren't happy with Sarah's decision, but eventually, they made up with her, and everything seemed to settle down. Fast forward to now, I've sent out invitations for our wedding. I specifically listed the names of those invited, and I included everyone in Sarah's family except for her. A few days ago, I got a call from her, claiming that I'm petty and childish for not inviting her. She said she's a family friend, and I'm ruining the family by not including her. Now her parents are involved, fighting to have her and her husband invited. But I'm standing my ground. My fiancé is on my side, though he's a little conflicted since Sarah was his best friend growing up. So, am I the asshole for not inviting her to our wedding? AITA for telling my accidental roommate she can't have sex in my bathroom? So here's the situation. Sam, 18F, called me about 7 weeks ago to tell me that she was dropping out of school because the cost of living on campus was too high, and she didn't have a car to commute. We agreed she could move in with me at the end of the semester. I made it clear beforehand that I don't charge friends rent but asked if she could contribute to utilities. A few days later, she came over and I never really asked her to leave. I had made 2 main boundaries clear before she moved in. No sex in shared spaces or on furniture. Ask before bringing anyone over. After she moved in, she started calling it our apartment, but immediately began breaking the boundaries. She refused to help with chores like loading the dishwasher, saying she just didn't like doing dishes. After a few weeks, I found out that she had been having sex in the bathroom. I texted her to remind her of the boundary. She agreed and said she'd stop. Since then, she's had some emotional stuff going on with her breakup, and I've been trying to be there for her, staying up late, comforting her and helping her out. About a week ago, Sam went to her mom's for Thanksgiving, and a few days later, she texted me saying her mom wanted her to move back home. She asked if she could come by the next day to get her stuff. Over the 6 weeks she stayed with me, Sam didn't pay for anything. When she moved out, she offered to pay the utilities for December. I sent her the bills and she sent me the money. But then, I woke up one morning to find I had been blocked everywhere by Sam. I was upset about it but also hurt because I'd gone through something similar with another person recently, and it stung to be treated like this again. I asked a mutual friend what happened, and she told me that Sam felt like I had too many rules and had a double standard. Specifically, Sam was upset because she said I had sex on my own mattress in my own room when Sam wasn't around, but got mad at her when she had sex in the shared bathroom. She also said she wasn't comfortable with the state of the apartment. To clarify, I work about 60 hours a week, while Sam only worked 2 or 3 days a week for 5-hour shifts. I had time to clean up around the apartment, but I was often busy with work. I did take her to and from work most days without asking for gas money, but on the few days I couldn't, I asked her to get an Uber. We had also planned to get a 2-bedroom apartment in March, once my lease was up for renewal, and I told Sam that until then, I just wanted her to pay utilities. She never expressed any issues with the boundaries I set. So, was I in the wrong for telling Sam she couldn't have sex in my bathroom? Am I the asshole for rage quitting after losing an election? I, 28, female, have been a member of a large volunteer organization for several years. I'm one of the longest-standing members, having spent hundreds of hours contributing to various aspects of the organization. I've held smaller leadership roles across multiple areas and even have experience as the president of another organization. When I first joined, things weren't going well, so I, along with others, worked incredibly hard to improve the situation, and we succeeded. In fact, we improved things so much that the organization gained a massive influx of new members. These new members formed very close bonds, which we specifically encouraged, and they have no idea how bad things were before or how much work went into maintaining the progress we've made. I recently ran for president in the most recent election. I was up against 5 other candidates. 4 of us had years of experience and had been preparing our campaigns for months, or even years. One candidate, let's call them Alex, was extremely new, having been in the organization for only a few weeks. Alex had no experience and decided to run for president at the last minute. However, Alex had a large friend group of other new members. Although Alex was barely eligible to run, they made the cut by just a few days. The election was extremely close between me and Alex, and I lost by just 1 vote. The rest of the newly elected officials were all new members from the same friend group, all of whom also lacked experience. After the election, it was discovered that 9 to 10 votes, specifically those of leadership members who worked closely with me, were not counted due to a computer error. These were the people who had voted for me, and I technically won the election. They tried to get the results overturned, but the higher-ups refused to allow it, fearing it would look like favoritism. In the end, I was told to keep quiet about the situation and not share the truth with anyone. Now, I find myself in a tough situation. Because the new executive team has no experience, I've started feeling a lot of pressure to take on a lower leadership position to help guide them and ensure all the hard work we've put in over the years doesn't fall apart. I've absolutely refused to do this. In fact, I've decided to drop all leadership roles and not take on any responsibilities this year. This decision has led to multiple people telling me that I don't care about the organization, and that if things fall apart, it'll be my fault. I feel like it's a slap in the face for them to expect me to step into a leadership role without the title that acknowledges my efforts. I've worked hard for years, and I don't want to just keep propping up a system that doesn't recognize my contributions. So, am I the asshole for dropping all leadership positions and letting the new team figure it out on their own? Am I the asshole for ruining our family dinner after a comment about my smile? We're currently on a family vacation with my husband, 2 kids, and my parents. A little background. My mother is a bit odd, and my dad has often said that she and I are like oil and water. It's hard to explain fully, but to sum it up, she seems very competitive for my father's attention, not just with me, but also with her grandsons. For example, if my dad wants to read them a story or tuck them into bed, she interrupts him and tells him it's time for him to go to sleep. It's incredibly awkward to watch. Another important detail is that I have chronic pain. I've exhausted all treatment options, and my once successful career is gone. My mother downplays my pain, acting as if it's just a small headache, even though she knows I'm always in some form of pain. In contrast, she's constantly looking for reasons to see a new doctor for every tiny twinge she feels. It's like a constant search for validation over her own health concerns. Now, to the issue. Tonight, we were about to go out for our first family dinner of the trip. We get to the lobby, everyone's dressed up, and the place is decorated for Christmas, so I'm taking pictures. I ask my dad to take a family picture of the 4 of us. As we're posing with the kids in front, I notice my mother standing right next to my dad, and then she yells, "Stop that! You need to fix your smile." At first, I think she's talking to one of the kids, so I add in, "Okay, nice smiles, everyone." But then my mom interrupts again and says, "No, your smile is horrible. It looks like," and she starts pulling at her own face, one side of her mouth up, one side down, while tilting her head to mimic me. I was honestly baffled because I was just smiling normally. I realized that my smile probably doesn't extend up to my eyes like it used to do to the pain, but I was still trying to smile. I try to reset myself, but she yells again, "Stop making that face." At that point, I'm really angry. I leave the pose, grab the phone from my dad, pick up my purse, and start walking toward the restaurant. But she follows me, continuing to criticize my smile, saying I need to look at the photos to see how awful it looked. I do look at them, and there was absolutely nothing wrong with the picture. There was no reason for her to keep going on about it. By this point, I'm done. I stop, tell my husband I'm sorry, but that I'm going to go back to the room. I tell him he and the kids can go to dinner without me. I was so angry that I started crying as soon as I was away from her. Now, my mom, and probably everyone else, thinks I ruined the dinner. And honestly, I probably did. But I feel like I shouldn't have to let her words slide anymore. I've already lost so much due to this chronic pain, and now she's criticizing something as basic as my smile, which I have no control over anymore. But I feel like I'm being unfair to my family, who I know wanted to have a good time, and that makes everything worse. So, am I the asshole for ruining dinner over a comment about my smile? Am I the asshole for telling my son that the fact that his sister was happier to see her cousin was his fault? I, 42, male, have a son named Jack, 22, and a daughter named Cassie, 7, from 2 different marriages. Jack's mother, Penelope, passed away when he was 9, and it was a huge loss for both of us. It took me a long time to feel ready to date again, which I did when Jack was 14. He was understandably upset about it. I met my current wife, Sarah, through work. We dated briefly, but when birth control failed and Sarah became pregnant, our relationship moved quickly. She moved in with Jack and me when she was 4 months pregnant, and we had to leave the apartment I shared with Penelope due to lack of space. This transition was tough on Jack, and he was put into therapy to help him adjust. Sarah, however, made an effort to respect Penelope's memory and kept memorabilia from my late wife, as Sarah had a bad experience with her own stepmother erasing her mother's memory. Despite this, Jack's relationship with Cassie, my daughter, didn't improve. When Cassie was born, Jack wanted nothing to do with her. While it was hurtful, I understood his feelings, especially after losing his mother. However, Cassie's maternal cousin, Will, 18, adored her from day one. Will took on the big brother role, frequently hanging out with her, playing with her dolls, and even having a matching Hello Kitty necklace with her that he uses as a good luck charm. This year, both Jack and Will went off to college. Jack didn't take high school seriously, had poor grades, and didn't get any scholarships. I could have paid for a private school, but I refused to pay $50,000 per year for him to not try, so he went to community college for 2 years and then transferred to a good school. Will, on the other hand, was an A student and a great athlete, earning an almost full scholarship to a faraway school. For Thanksgiving, both boys came home. Jack arrived first, and while Cassie greeted him with some enthusiasm, it was nothing compared to how she greeted Will. She had waited for Will at my sister-in-law's house, made a big glittery sign, and bawled when she saw him. My sister-in-law posted the video of the reunion on Facebook and Jack saw it. He was really upset about the difference in the way Cassie welcomed him home. After listening to him complain about it repeatedly, I snapped and told him that this was the consequence of his actions. He had done nothing to build a bond with his sister for the past 7 years, and now he was seeing the result. Jack got really upset, stormed off to his room, and since then, my in-laws have been calling me, demanding that I reprimand Cassie for not greeting Jack with the same level of enthusiasm. Cassie doesn't know why Jack is upset, but she can tell something is wrong, and it's affecting her. Will is angry at Jack for making Cassie upset. I'm at a loss for what to do, and I'm wondering if I was wrong in how I handled it. So, am I the asshole for telling my son that his sister's reaction was his fault? Am I the asshole for not revealing the gender or names of my future child to family and friends? This situation has gotten so out of hand, it's almost unbelievable. I am 38 years old and 6 months pregnant with my first child. I don't have a terrible relationship with my in-laws, but it's not great either. They are incredibly active on social media, posting several times a day, like 4 or 5 posts daily. It drives me absolutely crazy. At first, I didn't tell anyone I was pregnant, not even my husband, until I passed the 12-week mark. I have a high-risk pregnancy, and I didn't want to get anyone's hopes up in case something went wrong. Thankfully, everything has been going smoothly since then. Over the Thanksgiving weekend, both sides of our family started asking for the baby's gender and wanting to talk about names. My mom knows that we're not ready to share any of that, and she's been very supportive. However, my siblings and my in-laws have been relentless. I've told them I don't know the gender and that I don't want to find out because it really doesn't matter to me either way. For names, we're keeping our choices private. We have a few picked out, but we might change our minds once the baby is born. I refuse to share our pics because I know they'll just post about it on social media. It's not that I don't trust their excitement. I just don't trust them to keep it to themselves. My husband is completely on the same page as me. Still, they keep accusing me of pushing them out of the process. Honestly, I just don't feel comfortable with how they act and how much they share online. Here's where I might have gone too far. After repeatedly asking them to stop, I finally got fed up. I'm no stranger to newborns. After all, I've worked with them for over 20 years, so I've calmly explained how I feel. But the questions kept coming, so in a moment of frustration, I jokingly said, "If you don't stop, I'll name the baby Rudolph." My mother-in-law responded, "Why can't you ever do anything normal? This is supposed to be the fun part, and you're ruining it for all of us." I could tell I hurt her feelings, but everything I do ends up plastered all over social media, and that's not something I want for my child. My husband immediately stepped in and told his family to back off. He told them that if they wanted to be involved, they needed to show actual effort rather than just badgering me and offering unwanted advice. That's when things really blew up. Decades-old issues came up, and we ended up leaving the gathering. And, of course, his sister posted about it on Instagram, proving my point. Now, we've turned off our phones because I keep getting called the bitch who made mom cry. So, am I the asshole here?
Am I the asshole for telling my husband to return a puppy? My husband and I are in our mid-40s and have been married for 15 years with 2 kids, ages 14 and 11. A couple of years ago, our senior dog passed away. Since then, we've talked about getting another dog, but we agreed it would be better to wait until the kids graduate high school. Dogs are a huge commitment and I don't have time. Between the kids' activities 7 nights a week and working 2 jobs, 50 hours a week, I'm stretched thin. My husband works full-time too, but he works from home 3 days a week. Yesterday, I came home to a surprise. A puppy. I was really angry because I had made it clear that I didn't want another dog right now. The kids were excited, but I felt blindsided. He said it was my birthday gift, but I pushed back, saying that getting a dog is a family decision and I felt disrespected. He flew into a rage, threatened separation, and spent the night elsewhere. When he came home today, I apologized for suggesting that he got the dog because he wanted it, instead of it being a heartfelt gift. But I told him he needed to return the dog. He mentioned separation again and said I treat him like shit. Am I the asshole for insisting he return the puppy? Am I the asshole for yelling at my mom after my brother ran away? My family is pretty religious and conservative. I have my own opinions, but I usually keep quiet and just avoid my family as much as I can. My brother, 20, still lives at home and he's always been more out there. He's very open-minded and artistic, which has often clashed with our parents and sisters. He was a really good volleyball player in high school but quit his senior year just to spite our parents, so you can probably imagine the kind of guy he is. But he's the only boy, so our parents let it go. Recently he acted in a silly amateur film for one of his friends in which he kisses a boy. I don't care about it, but the film wasn't a secret, and someone we know came across it and sent it to our parents, who kicked him out. My younger sister and her husband offered to take him in, but my brother left less than a week later because our brother-in-law was being a jerk about the film. Now no one knows where he is and everyone is pissed. Often angry. I only know he's alive because he's texted me a few times. My mom calls the family over almost every day to play the blame game, and yesterday it was my turn. She basically said that, as the oldest, I didn't do my job and led him astray because I failed as a sister or some crap. I got so angry I told her to shut the hell up and that this is more her fault than mine. It's a big deal in our family to disrespect her like that, so everyone was upset with me for yelling at mom and breaking her heart, even more after what my brother did. I told them to stop acting like victims and that they'd better pray he decides to see any of us again. Then I left. I feel better, but now the entire family is angry at me, especially since my brother isn't around to take their anger. I wish I could run away too, but I have responsibilities tying me here. Now, I'm wondering if I'm the asshole and if I should apologize. Am I the asshole? Am I the asshole for not leaving my estate to my severely disabled brother? I, 33F, received a terminal diagnosis earlier this year. I have a couple of years at best to get everything in order before I won't have the cognitive ability to do so anymore. I've been working with a lawyer and an end-of-life care social worker to make sure everything goes as smoothly as possible and that my wishes are respected. My family situation is complicated. My parents were never married and my dad passed away from the same condition I now have when I was 12. He never remarried, so his assets were put in a trust for me by my grandparents. My mom married after they broke up and had my half-brother, 26M, who is severely mentally disabled. He has the cognitive level of a 7-year-old in an adult's body, and he's very challenging to care for, even with all the resources they have. My mom and stepdad struggle financially, and they tried hard to get control of my trust while I lived with them, but they couldn't. I occasionally help them out financially, but it feels like my mom treats me as an emergency fund rather than as her daughter. My stepdad has always been bitter about the financial aspect, especially since my dad's family is well off. I don't share much about my life with them because they often get passive-aggressive and guilt-trippy. Now that I know I'm on borrowed time, I've been trying to talk more with my mom. We've never had a great relationship, but I wanted to try to resolve some issues. Since my diagnosis, she's been nicer and more concerned, so I thought it was okay to open up a bit. I didn't want her to be blindsided or feel obligated to take on anything, as I've appointed another family member to handle my medical and financial power of attorney. I explained that I'd arranged for my own care so she wouldn't feel burdened, and she was thankful for that. But then, she brought up how she had always hoped I'd be the one to ensure my brother was taken care of after she was gone, and assumed that, in a way, I still would be. She suggested that whatever I leave behind could go into his care fund, and she'd make sure he knew it was from his big sister. Here's where I might be the asshole. I'm not leaving anything to my mom or my brother. I don't have kids, but I've been the favorite auntie to my best friend's 2 children for their entire lives. They are the light of my life and I spend a lot of time with them. My best friend and I have been through a lot together. She and her husband have been the ones going with me to appointments and letting me stay with them when I was too sick for meds to be home alone. I plan to leave whatever remains of my estate to her kids for college. I know the money could help secure better care for my half-brother and relieve some of my mom's burden, but I feel I want to help someone else now. Edit. Thank you for the kind messages. To answer a few questions. A. I'm not close to my half-brother at all. I didn't meet him until my dad passed, and the 6 years I lived around him were challenging and sometimes frightening. I haven't seen him in person in 15 years. I doubt he even understands that he has a sister, or what that would mean. I care about his welfare as much as I would any other mentally disabled person, but I don't feel a familial bond just because we share DNA. I've already contributed a fair amount to help my mom stay solvent to care for him, so one could argue he's already benefited significantly. As much as my mom may wish it, I would never have taken on legal responsibility for him after her passing. His father's family could step in if they chose. B. I am working with a strong team to get things in order. My estate lawyer and financial advisor are prepared to lock everything down once I finalize my decisions about my assets. I trust my executor, so the logistics and legal planning are under control. I just need to make a few hard decisions. Reflecting on some of the responses, I'm considering closing the chapter on my relationship with my mom and her family. I've always hoped that she cared in her own way and that our relationship could improve, but I'm not sure I want to spend what time I have left chasing that. The social worker offered to set up family sessions with a counselor specializing in terminal family issues, so I may let that be my guide. Am I the asshole for making a woman lose a costume contest? I'm the events chair of my fraternity this semester, and I organized our Halloween party, which took place yesterday. Every year we host a big costume contest. It costs $5 to enter and the winner takes the pot. With around 30 to 50 entries each year, the prize is pretty significant. This year we had 40 people enter with about 160 people attending. In the past there's been one girl who always wins. A lot of my fraternity brothers have a thing for her. Her costumes are usually the typical sorority girl style. A short skirt, boots, fishnet leggings, a bra or corset, and some animal ears with light face paint. Now, I'll admit my costume wasn't that creative either, just angel wings, white shorts, and a halo. So I get that people dress to look good more than for originality. But I figured that even though she looked great, the contest should be about creativity, not just who looks hottest. For the contest, she dressed as a bee, similar to her usual, with a short skirt and a revealing top. When the votes came in, she won by one vote, but I hadn't voted yet. I cast my vote and my vice chairman agreed with me and voted too, which put her in second place. When I announced the results, she was visibly upset. She's won the last 4 years, so this was a shock for her. Later, one of my fraternity brothers who was upset about it, told her I intentionally voted against her because I didn't like her, which isn't true. I'm honestly neutral about her. She confronted me, accused me of having a problem with her, and we argued. I told her it wasn't a contest for the sluttiest costume, but for the best costume, and she should be glad we created a runner-up prize of $50 for her. We ended up getting separated after the argument. Now, several of my fraternity brothers are mad at me for upsetting her.
Am I the asshole for telling my daughter's father that I will not be doing a quinceañera for her? So here's my situation. I, 35F, have a 13-year-old daughter who wants a quinceañera. For those who don't know, it's a huge, traditional celebration when a girl turns 15 in the Hispanic culture. It's typically a big, expensive event with fancy dresses, food, music, and a lot of guests. I'm not against the tradition itself, but I just don't feel comfortable spending that much money on one event. I'm a US-born Hispanic woman, but I'm not exactly steeped in traditional Mexican culture. I've lived in the US most of my life, and my kids are Americanized. They are familiar with the culture, but they're not raised with the kind of traditional Hispanic celebrations that many families have. Here's where the tension starts. My daughter's father, 36M, lives with his mom, doesn't pay child support because of his own financial issues. He owes the IRS and has credit card debt, and doesn't contribute financially to anything for our daughter. I'm the one who pays for everything, her school activities, sports, clothes, trips, you name it. I don't ask him for anything because he's already paying child support for another child he has with his ex, and I don't want to burden him further. I'm in a good place financially. My fiancé and I make a decent income, we're debt-free, and I've worked hard to stay that way. I have a full-time job, side contract work, and I'm a part-time graduate student. I'm managing everything without relying on my ex, and while it's tough, I'm doing it. So when my ex approached me about the quinceañera, he told me that our daughter wants one and that she wants a big party with all the family in one place. I told him right off the bat that I'm not doing a full quinceañera. I offered to throw a simple party in our backyard instead, and I invited him to come. We have a nice house and a spacious backyard, so it would be a fun and affordable way to celebrate her. Then the conversation took a turn. My ex told me that his cousin had a baby shower at a ranch-style venue that cost $3,000 for 250 people. He's now pushing for a similar setup for our daughter's quinceañera. He says his family is huge, at least 100 people, and that it's not fair for our daughter to have a small party when everyone else gets a big one. I freaked out. I don't have the time or energy to plan such a big event, especially since I'm already juggling work, school, and taking care of everything else for our daughter. I told him no, that it wasn't going to be a quinceañera but a simpler party with food, a DJ, and no more than 100 people. He then told me I was really disappointing him, which hit me hard. I explained that I simply couldn't afford it, that quinceañeras are ridiculously expensive, dress, dolls, waltz, damas, band, and all that, and that I couldn't handle the stress of planning a huge event on top of everything else I'm doing. To make matters worse, he gave me $200 recently and said he would give me $100 every pay period going forward. But, to be honest, this is the first time he's given me that much money for our daughter since we separated when she was 1. The money feels like a band-aid, and it doesn't change the fact that he's not been involved in any meaningful way for most of her life. I'm already stressed because I'm facing finals this week, and the stress of dealing with him is keeping me up at night. It feels like I'm constantly walking on eggshells, and no matter what I do, I'm made to feel like I'm in the wrong. Talking to him is pointless because all it does is cause me more anxiety. Now, I'm considering giving him back the money and telling him we should each just do what we can for our daughter separately. I just don't know if that will make things worse, and I'm trying to keep things as civil as possible for the sake of our daughter. Update. I just want to clarify that I was always planning to throw my daughter a party. I wasn't going to go all out with a quinceañera, but I had planned for something nice in our backyard. I told her dad that he's more than welcome to come, but I wasn't going to be spending thousands of dollars on an extravagant event. I just want to be realistic and make sure we do something manageable and meaningful, not something that will put unnecessary stress on me or our finances. Am I the asshole for my reaction to my wife giving our twin sons true crime-related names? My wife has a bit of a peculiar hobby. She's obsessed with true crime. It's one of those interests that I try to ignore as much as possible. For the most part, she's respectful about it and knows when it's time to talk about it and when to keep it to herself. Honestly, it doesn't come up much unless she's around another true crime enthusiast or watching a documentary on the subject. The hobby doesn't interfere too much with our relationship, so I've never been too bothered by it. That being said, we recently had twin boys earlier this year. As you can imagine, choosing names was a big deal for us. There were lots of negotiations between us, especially since I wanted to make sure we chose names that would be timeless and not end up being a source of teasing later on. I also wanted to steer clear of anything too unusual, something that would stand out in a bad way. I'm a bit traditional when it comes to names, so I took on the role of playing the more cautious one in our discussions. Ultimately, I agreed that she had the final say on names, especially since she was doing most of the hard work with the pregnancy and delivery. But I did voice my concerns whenever she suggested names that I felt were too eccentric or life-ruining, as I put it. There was a particular name she suggested that made me raise an eyebrow, but after some serious back and forth, we settled on 2 names that seemed perfectly normal: Dylan and Eric. They're pretty common names, and I thought nothing of them. To me, they were just typical names for our sons. At the time, everything felt fine, and we were both excited to welcome our little ones. That was until we visited my sister-in-law's house a few weeks ago to show off the twins. My wife was beaming with pride as she introduced them, and everything seemed fine until my sister-in-law pulled me aside privately. She looked at me with a mix of concern and surprise and said, "Are you serious? You named your twins after them." I was immediately confused. I had no idea what she meant. At first, I thought she was just being dramatic, but she clarified that our sons' names, Dylan and Eric, were the same as the infamous Columbine shooters, Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I had honestly never made that connection until that moment. I was in shock. I immediately tried to brush it off, thinking it was just a coincidence, but the reality of the situation set in. When I got home later that day, I confronted my wife. I told her I was seriously concerned and that we needed to change the names. I explained that the association with the Columbine tragedy was something neither of us had considered, and I didn't want our children to go through life with names that might attract unwanted attention or judgment. She seemed incredibly defensive and insisted that it was purely a coincidence. She said that while she might have subconsciously paired the names together, there was nothing wrong with them, and they were just common names. She argued that changing the names now would be a hassle and might draw even more attention to the situation. I tried to reason with her, saying that we could simply explain that we hadn't made the connection at the time and that we wanted to make things right. After all, my sister-in-law had already noticed it, and I could only imagine what other people might think once they realized the association. But my wife remained firm and wouldn't budge. She seemed genuinely upset that I would suggest changing their names, almost as if I were overreacting. I get that she's attached to the names now, but I feel like we're walking into a minefield with them. The thought of our sons growing up with the same names as such infamous figures feels wrong to me. I even tried suggesting alternatives, but she just dismissed them. She says that it's an overreaction on my part, and that people shouldn't judge our kids based on their names. She doesn't want to give in to the public's perception. But the more I think about it, the more I can't shake the feeling that it's a huge mistake. I'm really stuck. I love my wife, and I know she doesn't mean any harm, but I feel strongly that we need to change the names. Am I wrong for asking her to do so, or am I overreacting? Edit *4. Context: some of you might be wondering why the names didn't raise red flags earlier. The truth is, we didn't really think too much about the names when we chose them. Dylan and Eric just felt right to us.